Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Speed and Grease. We are on to episode 8, and in this episode, I had the honor of having Kirby Kurth join me in my studio. Kirby has been racing for 49 years, and even after all those years, doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, especially now that both of his sons are involved in racing as well. He's got a lot of history, starting at a very young age, and a lot of good stories around those times when he started hanging out at my grandfather Tom Reffner's race shop. He tells a story about how his mom wanted to keep him away from race cars, but one day when he was outside the house and could hear a race car running in the distance, it was kind of game over, and he eventually found himself hanging out at that race shop with my grandpa and John Bovee and a lot of the other great racing legends that from time to time would hang around that race shop. And when you grow up racing around a lot of great racing legends and have had the privilege of racing with a lot of those guys of the names of Mike Miller, Larry Deachens, like Kirby has, and you're still racing to this day, you accumulate a lot of great memories and a lot of great stories. And I was really honored and glad that Kirby took the time to share those stories with me and with all of you. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it. Welcome, Kirby, and thanks for coming on. I certainly appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
I figured you had a story or two you could share with everyone, so it's figured you'd be a good one to have on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been around for a long time. So
how long have you been racing?
1976 until now, 49 years.
No kidding.
Next year will be 50 years.
Has it been 49 straight? Has there ever been a year where you didn't race?
No, I don't think so. Maybe missed a few shows in 1981. I was out trucking, so
okay,
trying to make a living. But I still came home and raced on when I could. So actually, it's been every year. So don't know how to do nothing else.
Yeah, that's quite the streak. I just saw Lowell Bennett. I posted on Facebook that this year's going to be his 50th year, and I was like, Wow, that's twice as long as me. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your dad raced too, right?
Yep, my dad raced, and we lived in town in Wisconsin Rapids there.
Yep.
And beeline alignment was in our backyard, and my dad raced, and Billy Voigt pitted for my dad. And then heard Mom and Dad talking one night. I raced go-karts out at Haskey's, out at Bill Nerf's Cartway. Okay. And they were talking that I heard them say we need to get Kirby away from race cars.
Your parents said that?
Yes. So they bought a lot on 52nd Street and built a new house. My dad worked in the beer and mill, and when my dad quit racing, Billy started racing, Billy Voigt, and then I hung around that beeline. I've been there since I was old enough to walk. And I went over and helped Billy. I hung out with Bill until he quit racing. And then we moved out to our new house. And I went to school, and I had orders to spread black dirt in the lawn in the front. And I was laying in the new house watching cartoons when I got out of school. And my dad said, come home at 3 o'clock and said, get out there and spread that black dirt like I told you. And I went out to spread it, and I got second shovel, heard a race car running. And I was like, where's that coming from? I threw the shovel down, and I walked through the woods, and it kind of zigzagged around and went through the woods, and Grandpa Tom was unloading the Mustang off the truck.
And how old were you at this point?
14.
14, okay.
Yeah. And then I seen John Bovee driving his Nova around the shop, spinning it out. And I had to go over there. I walked right over there. And then I knew John from Bradle Auto Supply.
Okay.
And when I was younger, I packed brake shoes and stuff for them. And then when 8th Street was being built in Rapids, Bradle's was in beeline alignment. They had their auto supply in there.
Okay.
So I knew Vi and Jerry really well. And I did the old brake linings and stuff, packed them in gunny sacks, and they paid me for that.
Okay.
So anyway, and then I just hung out at beeline basically, and then started going over by your grandpa, and then it's like history from there. It's, I was over there all the time. So
yeah, Well, before we get too far into that, your dad, because I don't think I really know much, did your dad just race at Griffith Park, or did he kind of venture around?
No, he was at Stratford and Black River Falls
Okay.
and Griffith Park.
Okay.
So he never got on Golden Sands at all.
Okay. Gotcha.
So there was different fair tracks that they ran, like Adam's Friendship and that, back in the day. So
okay. And how, was he racing when you were born, or did he kind of start when you were kind of a young pup?
He was still racing when I was born. I always had to ride in the car, and we had a one-stall garage on K Street, and he had to gun the car to get up into the garage. And I remember this. I fell backwards. I hit my head on the roll bar, cut my ear open, and my mom was having a fit.
That's where it all started, from hitting your head on that roll bar.
Yep, exactly, yeah.
But was that when you were that young watching your dad race, was that were you like, hey, this is what I want to do, or did that start an itch for racing for you, or not really?
No, not really. I mean, I remember it, and then Kenny Dine had a Hudson number 33 with a big B on the side of it. Beeline was the sponsor on that, and they lived on Airport Avenue.
Okay.
So we were always over at Kenny's while Dad's working on the race car over there. He drove for Kenny too.
Okay.
So, and then Clarence Greeno, I don't know if you know him at all. He had all the black and white 57 Chevys that Lyle Naberfeld drove. Clarence and Lyle.
Okay.
Clarence and Lyle switched back and forth on the 57, the black and white X.
Okay.
So I just had a replica that I just sold to Lyle's daughter.
Okay.
57
really?
Chevy.
Okay.
Yep. So Dave Cox and her have it. So John Elf actually has it. He's working on it.
He's got a couple things he's tinkering with.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. So that's cool. Then when you found yourself over at the Reffner shop on 48th Street, is that what sparked it then for you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because I was like, I never knew your grandpa then, and John introduced me to him. And then I went with John to State Park Speedway, and Grandpa was racing up there, still had the bus. And I, and he treated me so nice, first time I ever met him, and I went and bought a 8x10 picture and had him sign it of the Cyclone.
Okay.
And, I just pretty much with Bovee and I started traveling around with them guys pitting, So one night your grandpa and I just went to Columbus 151, and I never done it before. He told me to take the left rear wheel off, take the brake, didn't have brakes on it, had drum brakes, take them off and sand all the pads and put everything back together, So he trusted me doing that, So I just started out real small, sweeping the floor, getting in trouble with Pete.
Yeah.
Hofferman over there. Yeah, I didn't sweep the floor right. Pete taught me how to sweep the floor.
Is he particular?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going in a straight line, and he just stood there and stared at me. And then he took the broom away from me and showed me how to sweep the floor, So I had a lot of good times over there, a lot of memories, So it pretty much I hung out there my second home.
Okay. Wait, were you there? Were you there all the time?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
The bus would drop me off right there. I just get dropped off right at the shop and just go right into the shop. Then Mom would call for dinner, and I'd run through the woods then and go home for dinner. So,
was that the extent? Is that the running you did back then? Just run through the woods to?
Yeah, eventually I bought a little dune buggy car, and I rebuilt the motor at your grandpa's shop, and I put that in their little V8, and it was a shortened up little 57 Chevy. We called it the paddy wagon, and it had like this slopey roof on it. And I drove that back and forth through the woods. That it was my first engine rebuild, and then John was still racing then, so I went with John to West Salem a lot, and stuff. And Dave Melton came around a lot at the shop. There was a lot of people through that little shop of yours. The Minnesota guys would come there and stay there and everything. So people from Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, Jack Constable came there, and he was out of Missouri, number 97, and Little John's car was there at the shop for quite a while, the 89 Mustang.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. Then Jasola and Jim Daly. There was quite a few of the ASA guys that were at your dad Or Grandpa's shop, I should
Yeah,
say.
never really heard much about any of them guys ever stopping in there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd go to the bar and then they'd sleep there.
Well, at least they had a place to stay, right?
Yeah.
I think that place is probably always open.
Yeah.
There's even a dog that lived there.
There was a dog, Meathead.
Yep, Meathead.
Yep, Meathead was there all the time with us. Yep. Yep, John's dog, yeah. So I had a lot of good times there. And like I said, I didn't get into the javelins and stuff. I was there while Pete and Tom were building the javelins, And so it's pretty cool. Then they went down to Alabama and got all them engines and stuff, and Grandpa had them all covered. There was no one could touch that javelin. That's why I wanted to hot lap it, and I got in trouble. So that thing had power.
So when did you get to hot lap it?
Kids rides at La Crosse. I don't remember what year it was, but it was hot and humid. And I think Mike Miller and Dick and Tom were all under, and Boomer were all under either Boomer's tire rack or Marv's because it's get out of the sun.
Okay.
They were all kneeling down having a conference. I took, first car I took was Larry Deachin's Mopar. Went out, put a blanket in there, gave some kids rides. And then I fouled one of the plugs in and it wasn't running right. So I had to bring it back in. And then I took Boomer's Nova, I think it was, and gave some kids rides. And then your grandpa's car was last. And I got out on the track and I gave probably 3 kids a ride in that and dropped them off. And then I pulled up there and there was no more kids left. So I was like, I was all belted in. So your grandpa's helmet was sitting on the floor. So I just, one of them red, white, and blue helmets, I put it on and I was just cruising around the track. And I took a couple hot laps and Grandpa Tom was standing at the guardrail just like this, bring it in. And I didn't know at the time. I got explained later after and I didn't go home that night with them. I had to go home with Trickle. So I got explained later after I got kicked out of the shop for maybe 4 weeks, maybe. I didn't get to go over there. And then finally, Pete called me and said, Tom wants to talk to you or whatever. And so I walked over to the shop then, and they were like, if you want to race, you got to build your own car. You almost screwed up the 67 feature wins. Tom said, if you would have wrecked that, because I think they wrecked a car, one of the other Javelins in Florida. And I know we were putting a new front stub back on it.
Okay.
So I think Bradenton, Florida or something, your grandpa wrecked it down there. And so he only had the one car. And he's chasing Dick's 67 feature wins. Yeah. So if I would have wrecked that car, I would have ruined his whole deal. But I wasn't aware of it at the time that he was chasing it. They explained it to me after to let me come back to the shop.
So you yourself, you hadn't even raced yet when you were out there hot lapping it?
No, okay. No. But that thing had some power. I mean, that thing pulled from turn 2 all the way down into turn 3, and I still wasn't that fast with it. But later on, I did get the experience because your grandpa, I was having trouble getting through turns 3 at La Crosse with my own car, and Grandpa took me. I had to carry the flag for fast time, and then he took me for the ride of my life at West Salem. And I mean, that car was digging all the way down into 3. It never ran out of power, that 401 in there. That thing just gone. And I'm hanging in there loose on the right side after holding the flag, And I think he said something to me like, that's how you get through turn 3. So,
did you have your pen and paper out while you're riding too?
No, I was still
hanging
shaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my eyes were so big. I think he got a kick out of that. He scared the crap out of me.
That was payback for running the javelin around the track.
That's what it was, yeah. And then Pete had Dick Trickle's street car that got stolen, and he had that on your frame jig in your shop. Still got it. That car sat up there, and Pete put a 65 Ford front stub on it, just like the Javelins, and tied the unibody in. And that was my first race car. I bought that from Pete then, and we built in your grandpa's shop. We built the roll cage and stuff. My dad helped a lot.
Okay.
So we had Dave Melton's pipe bender in there. We weren't supposed to be using, but he had electric pipe bender, so we made a really nice roll cage. And I don't think Dave would have cared anyway, But that was his company, Specialty Systems. That for some reason, Grandpa Tom had the pipe bender in there. That came in handy.
Oh, there you go. When you're driving Larry Deachin's car around West Salem giving kids rides? I mean, were you just like in awe that you were getting to just take these guys' cars out?
Yeah.
Especially at that, at that point, I mean, those guys were huge.
Yes. Yeah. And I drove it so slow and I didn't rev it, because I was, more or less used to not beating anybody's equipment, being as young as I was. I drove it around and then it had fouled the plug and it wasn't running right, so I brought it back in. So I know Larry had me over there and he was like free revving that thing on the cable tack, like 11,000, sitting still in the pits clearing the plugs out. So he's like, you can't lug that. You gotta rev it. And I said, well, you didn't tell me that, I didn't know. I'm just out giving kids rides,
They just didn't want to give kids rides that day. Had too hot.
Too hot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dick did go take his own car out and then give rides, but everybody else wanted to stay under the tire rack.
And they trusted Kirby.
Yeah, they trusted me to go. I was surprised. I wasn't expecting to even do that, But I really liked it. Once I got out there, I was kind of like, wow, I'd like to do this, And I've been to enough races with everybody that, it's kind of like, okay, I get to drive the car. I'm going to go do it,
But now, when it got to the point where, how long did your dad race up until, probably?
Whatever year Golden Sands opened, he quit that year. So is that 63, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I can't remember when they started.
Because Griffith Park and Golden Sands ran together for a while.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what year that was. I know Dad never hot lapped on Golden Sands at all.
Okay.
Pretty much, I think my mom was after him to quit. So.
And then once he was done racing, did your dad take you to races, or were you just going to the races on your own with buddies, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Chuck Hellner and his whole family. Chuck still works at Golden Sands. Yeah, the whole Hellner family. They had like 7 kids, and we all went out there. And Al Olski, we all went out there and sat in the stands.
Okay.
So I was at Golden Sands, and I studied Marv a lot. Marv would go 3 high at Golden Sands and win features, and I studied how he did it. I tried to pass that information on to Mike Miller, and Mike didn't want to listen to me. But Marv always would come out of the corner, and he'd let the inside car come up to the top of the track, and then when he went back down, then he'd dive around him.
Okay.
On 3 high. So Mike Miller did that one time with the Oldsmobile, and somebody ran him right off the top of the track into the sand, And I told Mike, you gotta, I'm giving advice to Mike Miller, you gotta let him come up and go back down there like Marv does and go around. I studied all that while I sat in the stands, when I was a kid. So I already had an idea how to do it, back then. So.
And then when you started building that first car, how old were you? Were you out of high school, in high school?
No, still in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, 15. Matter of fact,
Oh, wow, okay.
I ran it in 76 at Golden Sands on takeoff tires with your grandpa's. And I had some old hard tires on there, and I spun it out. And then I wanted to go to Wausau, and my dad said, no, you're not. You're not going to Wausau. Forget it. And I went up there anyway I stole his van because he went to work at the mill. And had mom take him, and then Chuck Hellner drove because I didn't have a driver's license. So Chuck drove me up there, and Chuck was always driving, and Phil Bickley asked me, how come he's always driving? I didn't have a license. Back then, you were supposed to have a license.
Yeah, I was wondering if you actually got on the track at 15 or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Chuck drove me up there. So then we had to, one time we stopped and switched out before State Park, and I drove the hauler in then. And then Phil wasn't around. I don't think he saw me then, but they let me run up there. And I went up there my first night up there, and I won the first heat and the consolation in the same night. And John Zeidler was up there. He was like the king of the consies. And John didn't like it that I showed up there, but we got to be good friends,
And why didn't your dad want you going up to State Park?
Just figured I didn't belong up there yet.
Okay.
No experience, But my car really flew at State Park. And your grandpa and Trickle are the ones that bent the leaf springs in the back and put the springs in the front, told me what to put in the front. So, At Golden Sands, I was a 2-footed driver, and Dick came over to your grandpa's shop, and he had this little wedge thing made up with holes drilled in it. He made me sit in the seat, and he crawled down there, and he said, "Put your foot where you want it." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "'Cause put your foot where you want it." And I put my foot down, and I said, "Well, I'm comfortable right there." And he slid that thing under my foot and marked the holes, and then he told me, drill holes and rivet that in and put your foot against that, push back in the seat. And he told me, gas, brake, gas, brake. Don't use your left foot for nothing but the clutch. And he made me turn into a 1-footed driver. Because he watched me at Plover, and he said, "You didn't make the same lap twice. You're off." Then he also told me when there was a big wreck, you're going to put both feet on the floor. You're going to have one on the throttle on the floor and one on the brake, and you're going to wreck the car. So that was his advice to me.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? All those guys drove 1-footed, and now so many people, it's they drive 2-footed. It's it's so common.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been comfortable 2-footed since I switched and did it all these years. But I got to get my pedals. They got to be lined right up so I can go from gas to brake.
Yeah, I drove. People are always surprised when I told them that too. That I drove, most of my career 1-footed. I can do it both ways. Drive both. When we're 1-footed or 2-footed. And I think someone say to me one time, like, "Man, I'm surprised, like, with you running go-karts, that with having the gas over here and the brake, that you weren't a 2-footed driver." I was like, "Well, we never really used the brake in a go-kart. I mean, it was pretty much hold it wide open, and you'd use the brake to scrub a little speed, and that was pretty much it. It wasn't, you really weren't a true 2-footed driver in a go-kart." But I was able to do both if I needed to, but I was primarily 1-footed. But yeah, same thing. I mean, pedals got to be the right distance and straight across from each other. Yep. And I 2-foot driving, I never had the issue where having a wreck in front of you and slamming both pedals down. But I've heard of people doing that though. I've heard of people doing that.
Yep. Yeah, that's the way they your grandpa and Dick and Mike Miller, them guys, even Marv and Jim Bach, they all kind of guided me when I did something wrong. One night I didn't get out of the way. I did make the feature at State Park. I won the semi and got into the feature, and then I was way up high on the track, and them guys ain't around to yell at these new kids, but and then they get run bad. They run the guy bad on the outside, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. And them guys told me after that feature, when we come up on you, you get down and get out of the way. And I respected what they said. They were the group. I mean, them were like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 superheroes. Deachens, your grandpa, Dick, Marv, Bach. Later on in life, I started on the pole of the feature at State Park, and I tell Steve Mall this story all the time. I was going to win my first feature. I took off the pole, and I was gone. So at State Park, he had no radios back then or nothing. So I'm looking over at where them guys are, and they're way over on the back straightaway. I'm going past the start-finish line. I got 10 laps to go in the feature. I'm going to win my first feature ever. And I hung out at Mike Miller's shop, and I hung out at your grandpa's shop, and I hung out at Dick's and out the box. And Marv, I didn't get over to see Marv all the time, but all of a sudden Mike stops in the corner at 3 and 4. And I'm like, I got a caution, and them guys all came up behind me, and then your grandpa out to the memorial, the Dick Trickle Memorial, explained something to me. That was a deal they had between all of them.
No kidding.
They were locked up in traffic and they couldn't get out. The last guy is supposed to cause a caution.
No kidding.
Yeah, and that would single file everybody out. And I was still barking about that race. And I was as big as I am now, probably a lot younger, maybe a little thinner. I went to Mike Miller and I told him, if you ever stop in the corner again like that while I'm leading, I'm going to drive right through your car. And I laid it down that I was going to wreck him. I said, you won't finish. And Mike was like, oh, well, Mike never explained that to me, but your grandpa did.
And you didn't hear that until way later in life.
Till the Dick Trickle Memorial.
No
I was
kidding.
sitting out there, and then Marv was out there. Marv and your grandpa were out there, and they were sitting there, and we were taking pictures with Dick's car that I have out at the memorial. I think you guys were out there too that day. And then Grandpa Tom giggled. He goes to Marv, should we tell Kirby what really is the deal here? And that's when he told me that Mike stopped because he was the last guy in line. He caused a caution to get everybody single file. And I ain't kidding you, in 10 laps, I ended up like 12th. Them guys went by me like I was backing up. So that's a pretty cool story. And at least I got to the bottom of it, you know.
Man, I know I'd never heard that either.
And I say to people that, I mean, I had my time when I was pretty fast and everything, but I say to people that think they're really something, you've never raced against these guys. You know, these young guys now, if them guys are still racing, they'd be in big trouble. That was a fast group of guys, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you really grew up racing in a pretty awesome era.
I did. Yep, with the best of them. Yeah, and I'm proud of that. You know, I'm not winning like I used to, and you know, and age is going to do that to you. But I'm still having fun doing it. So I mean, now I back down. I still have my super late, and I've got a modified. I'm going to run at the Dells, and then we got the truck for Cole, and I bought a 4-cylinder the other day, so I'm going to run 4-cylinder too. So I can't pass these cars up. Everybody's coming up with these deals, you know. So
I got a motor for sale and a body for sale. Why don't you buy one of those? I'll cut you a good deal.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, yeah. That's the reason I backed out with the super late. I've got a brand new T-Zar in my super late. But it's a 9-to-1 that it's Dick's motor that Kevin Lang had up there. So,
no kidding. And
everybody wanted the LS motor, so nobody would buy that 9-to-1 from Kevin. So I ended up buying it, and it's fresh and ready to go. I got 2 nights on it, you know. So I'm going to run that in CWRA, you know. And I'm not so sure I couldn't make the Alive for 5 show with it. It's got way too much horsepower.
I say it's probably got a lot of power.
It's got a lot of power, yeah. And Kevin forgot about it because, you know, after Dick passed away, I guess T-Zar called him one day and said, your engine's done. Kevin was like, I don't have a motor over there. And yeah, you do. And then Kevin's like, oh my God, you know.
Does T-Zar even make motors anymore?
I think they still do,
yeah. Okay. I just haven't heard about them a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think some of the guys at La Crosse, run a lot of T-Zars over there.
Gotcha. Okay.
And their weekly series over there. But yeah, been doing this a long time.
Yeah. So then, is that where you started running the most when you first got into the super late model? Was it State Park or?
Yeah,
where were y'all running?
State Park and Golden Sands. Them are like my tracks, you know. So, and you know, later on, I bought John Bovee's car when John quit. I bought his Bemco.
Okay.
And then I started running Dells all the time.
Okay.
So I went up to that Bemco car and still had the big block in it. And it's kind of weird. I raced with Tom Litchfield, and now his kids are racing, you know. Yeah. It's kind of like I've lived through all these eras, you know, and I've raced with you, and I raced with your grandpa, and I raced with Brian, and I raced with your dad. You know, it's like I'll probably hopefully get to race with your son, see?
Oh, everyone keeps saying that. Knock it off. Yeah, it's in the blood. It's in the blood. That is for sure. How long now when you built that first car, were you able to build that just from working at Bradle's Auto Service, or what were y'all doing back then?
Actually, your grandpa was giving me all the parts. Steve Mall had Pete had a Ford 9-inch in that.
Okay.
And Steve Mall had a Lynn quick change rear end.
Okay.
And it had the hubs and everything, wide pattern hubs. So if you go back and look at pictures of that, it had a 8-bolt truck spindle on the right front. It had the stock Ford spindle on the left side. We made a wheel for it.
Okay.
And then I had wide pattern in the rear. And Larry Baumel had these Baumel wheels with the little triangle in them, and I bought wheels for the back of the car with that. And I traded Steve Mall a Kawasaki motorcycle I had, and somehow a 10-speed bicycle got in on the deal too, and I still got Steve's bike. And we traded that back and forth, helped each other out with no money. And your grandpa came out of the back kiln with a fiberglass seat. and gave me a fiberglass seat to put in the car, made sure it was put in right. And I had a Ford 390 in there, just a stock motor. And I blew it up like almost every night. It would run out of, you go to Golden Sands to come off the track, the oil pressure would go down to zero, and you wouldn't get oil pressure until you got halfway through the pit area. And I kept spinning the bearings out of it, So I think one of my friends made a joke, why don't you just put it in there on Velcro, because you just pull it back out the next night anyway and build another motor. So, and then your grandpa came out with a aluminum intake, and he gave it to me to use. And he said, get that heavy intake off there, because them 390s, the intake weighs about 80 pounds. So he gave me an aluminum intake and put on there, it was on the hauler off of one of the 428s, and I put that on there. And eventually I bought a 428 motor and put it in there, and then it stayed together,
Were you building your motors in my grandpa's shop too, or where were you building the motors at?
Yeah, there and over at Mom and Dad's, because eventually I had to move out of there. I don't remember when it was when your dad and Brian started running, because I know your dad or Pete came to me and said, hey, you got to pack all your stuff up and you gotta go, and I said, okay. So then kicked Mom and Dad out of their garage and put my race cars over there then, or my car at that time.
Sorry, Mom, time to park outside.
Yep, mom's car sat outside, yeah. I after I got Bovee's car one time, I painted it in the house garage, and the wind took the paint out of the house garage and right around in Mom's drapes. She was not impressed with me. And she had red drapes, so the painting and needed to get a shop somewhere, but I never did until later on,
And how did you come? Were you 85 right from the start?
Yeah, when I bought John's car, John was 84.
Okay. Yep.
Like 84 braid law supply on there, and I thought, well, I looked around at State Park and Golden Sands, there was no 85s, and I wanted to keep it like with your grandpa's number somewhere in that neighborhood, and I thought, well, I'll just do 85,
Okay.
So, and that's how I got it, and I ran different numbers through the years, on other people's cars, but that's been my main number all the time. Yeah. Now my son's got it on the truck, so.
Cool.
Yeah, Cole wanted that, so yeah. And then we got Chase runs 99, so, and we do like a trickle lookalike car for him.
Yep.
So he's actually got the old Super America paint job on. So
Plum Crazy Purple.
No, he's white. When Dick had the white night with all the red and the yellow and the orange through it, he's got that.
Okay. Last year he was purple, though, right?
Last year he was purple, 99. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. So, yeah, the kids are kind of following along, and they're doing good,
Yeah.
Chase is going to eventually get in a super late, it's just, got to make more money trucking, But I had a lot of fun, all through the years at the shop and stuff, and I mainly just grew up there, and then once I got my driver's license, then I could run around the Mike Miller's and just some cool stuff that went on there. Mike Miller's shop was the first one to ever have central air. So we all hung out at Mike's.
Where was Mike's shop at?
36th Street, all the way down to the end past Dick's place. On the right-hand side, the very last shop on the right, that's where Mike was. They took the garage door out of the front now and moved it around the back, but I hung out there all the time. And, you get everybody coming through there. Boomer would come through there, and Jim Bach, and, Marv would stop there, and they'd have a big powwow there and get together and drink some beer and have fun, Just a great group of guys to be around. Bob Euler was there then building the chassis. And Mike Miller had a thing that hurry up and get the race car together for us. So I'd end up working on Mike's car too, even though I raced against him. I'd end up helping in the shop. And I figured that if nothing else, I could learn something,
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, noontime, Mike's yelling, shut everything off. And we're looking at each other in the shop. What? Paul Harvey's on. Had to shut the air compressor off, close the garage door. Everything was silent. Air compressor off, welder off, everything off until Paul Harvey was done. And then Mike would say, come on, get going. We got a race tonight. What are you guys doing standing around, So we listened to Paul Harvey till the rest of the story. Mike listened to that every day at noon,
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's just funny.
Just goofy stuff like that, So Bob Euler had an old hobby stock he brought back from Minnesota, and he had that in there working on it. Steve Mall worked out of there,
Okay.
out of Mike's shop too, So I was there when they built the hauler and all that stuff, that the hauler Dick eventually got.
Okay.
Yep, that was Mike's first.
Okay, Mike had that first.
Yep,
Okay.
that was a Dairyland Transport on it, number 18. Yep, he got rid of the old Dodge. So Dennis Strasberg worked there. He was a great guy. And one day Dennis and I were looking at each other, and it was like 90 degrees out. We needed gears for Mike's car, go to State Park. And Dennis looked at me and said, go out in the Dodge and get the gears. And I said, no, you go out there. It's too hot out there, Put that base up and try to dig gears out, and we're all in the air-conditioned shop, so.
Man, that was probably big time in it back then, having an air-conditioned shop.
Yep, that's why everybody came there. A lot of guys came there, just, stop there and stop and see us, And I'd be there, and then eventually Dick built his new shop just up the road there.
Yep.
And so then I was over there quite a bit, too. So helping Bob, forgot what Bob's last name is, but Dick's brother-in-law is in there working on cars all the time.
Okay.
He did all the duct work and everything. He's just like a perfectionist, really good guy.
Sure.
So, yeah, I hung around there. Then I hung around down at Grandpa's, why Baird and Brian were building cars, and John had quit already, so I had already bought some of John's stuff. And his other car, John sold to Bill Goss.
Okay.
That was the newer Nova. He had two Novas. I got the older one, and Bill got the newer one. So, yeah, quite a career starting out, hanging out with them guys. I think they put me in the right direction,
Yeah, I had no clue that you started that young.
Yeah, yeah. Was
there anyone else that young running with them guys?
I don't know. Just did what I could do and learned what I could learn. Yeah. Eventually, I get to the point with your grandpa where I'm struggling one year, and I come over to the shop, and your grandpa's flying, And I asked him, I had a little angle finder, and I asked Grandpa Tom, I said, can I check your trailing arms at right height and upper arm and measure your panhard bar and go home and see where I'm wrong? He said, absolutely not. So I was like, I respected that,
Yeah.
Learn on your own. I learned on my own. You learn on your own, he said, so, and I was like, okay, that's fine. And I visited with him for a while, and then I went up to Dick's shop, and I said to Dick, well, Tom didn't let me check his car, and Dick says, why? He goes, why not? I said, I don't know, but he wouldn't let me measure nothing. And I said, I know I'm off on something, either trailing arm angle or something, And I said, I can't measure it with me sitting in the car, so I don't know if I'm making it worse or better. So Dick hands me a pad and a pen and said, my car is all at race height right now. You can measure my stuff and go home and see how far you're off. Let me know what's off, and I'll let you measure mine. So I did all the measurements on Dick's car up on jack stands. And went home and found out that my left rear trailing arm wasn't up high enough, and I still remember all that. And panhard bar was way off. And Dick told me, I said, why? How come you let me measure this and Tom wouldn't? And Dick said, I'm Dick Trickle. You ain't going to outdrive me. That's what he told me. So it was pretty cool. He let me, and then I made notes after that, to try to keep my car decent. Most fun I had racing was with Uncle Brian.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with him. And he's probably told you some of the stuff I've pulled on him, so.
I don't know. Tell away.
We were in the shop one time, and he's going to kill me for telling this. His rivets all perfectly measured out. Car is beautiful. Get to the back by the left rear tire, and the skirt's hanging this far off the body. So I told him, I said, are you going to fix that, He goes, well, rivets are all 4 inches. Can't put another rivet in there. I go, well, you can put a rivet in there. And he's like, no. And I said, well, if you want it to look bad, I said, then just leave it. So he got mad at me, and he went and got the drill, and he's drilling the rivet on the end, and he drilled a hole in his finger.
No kidding.
So then he was mad at me. That was my fault, yeah. He was mad at me. He's like, yeah, Kirby's got me drilling a hole in the finger. I said, I didn't tell you to drill a hole in your finger. I told you to put, rivet the skirt up tight so it looks nice. You know?
Just the skirt, not the finger.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'll tell you what. One story I heard though was, I don't know what year this would have been. I don't know, because you bought later in life. Did you buy a car for my grandpa too? Or
Nope, from Brian.
From Brian, okay. I remember hearing a story of, I don't know if you were needed a little help getting it going or something like that, or was it running right? I think it was at State Park, and my dad gave you a hand setting it up, and then he went out and beat my grandpa, and then my grandpa told my dad, like, you're done helping Kirby, and
yeah,
I don't know what year that was, but
that car, it was a bot car, and that thing flew at State Park, and Brian crashed somewhere at Grundy or something like that, and they worked all through the night to get the car back together, and he needed to break in the brake shoes, and he got there late, and they wouldn't let him break his brake shoes in, so Brian went out to qualify, and he had his foot on the brake, and I could hear him breaking the brake pads in, and he went all the way around the track, and then he did a U-turn right by the start-finish line and went backwards around the track because he wasn't going to run it into the wall again and wreck it again after he just crashed, and I think they ended up kicking him off the track, and he got mad and went home.
And I think the year before he was the champion up there too.
He was, yeah. And then I bought that car. I bought that car from him. Okay. And then I won a couple championships with that car at State Park. That thing was just ungodly fast up there. I mean, you could drive it down in the corner and just put it right on the floor and drive up the inside of anybody. You're just gone. You were too far up on them. They couldn't get back down. They come in the corner and slide out, and you could just throttle it right up the inside. It would just bite. That thing was really a good car. So I miss that car at State Park. I haven't had one that good up there since. So that was a great car. And I used it to beat one of the championships I won. Brian would have actually won it, but because of that brake thing and him turning around and losing that night, I ended up winning the points with his old car.
Okay.
So, and I got a track champion out of it. So, and
what year is that?
I don't remember I don't remember what year it was.
Okay.
But he had the new style box car then, the new car, that's what he had.
Okay.
And I had bought the old one. So he was still winning with that. The night I bought it, he won at Golden Sands with it, and we went back to the shop, and he pulled his engine out, and then I bought the transmission and stuff from him. That we could just pull the engine out, and I could take the car. I had wrecked my car at Dell's, so that's how I ended up. Actually, I didn't buy that car. My dad bought it because he was all worried about me. He's like, you're never going to get a Rander car back together, and we actually put that on Bill Goss's frame machine and pulled it back. And my dad was cussing me out that the thing needs a stub, and I do stuff the crazy way. So I just pulled it back on Bill's frame machine, and my dad was cussing at me about it. And I had an extra prototype motor I got from Dick, and put my other prototype motor in it, and I took it to Golden Sands, and my dad said to me, I don't know why you brought that car. It's never going to run. And I went out and set fast time with it. So, or CWRA.
And that was which car?
That was my 1992 special, my Rander car that I won everything with.
Okay.
That car was, I don't know what was with it. I tried to update it, and I would just, like a fish out of water. It had rubber lower A-frames on it, that went in the mounts.
Yep.
And I took them out and put Heimses in it, and the car was completely out from under me and gone. And I went home and put the old A-frames back in on the lowers and come right out and started winning with the thing again. So I don't know if with the spring and the shock that it made that much difference or what,
Interesting.
Yeah, so I thought that the rubbers were binding it up, so that's why I went to Heims, on the lowers. And, come right back, started winning with that thing. And that car was weird. You could almost put the left side tires on the right, and it would just fly. That was another good car that I had, and I bought that. That was Spike Lindley's car that he sold to Steve Mall. It was a fifth design Howe Rander Howe car.
Okay.
So
now, having gotten you basically started out just, running with all those guys, all those big names. How long did it take you to win your first race?
Well, I ran from when I started in 76 until 1981. I don't think I ever bought a tire. And I think that's where racing's making a big mistake nowadays. I ran off, I couldn't afford nothing. So, and I was still in school and everything. So I ran on everybody's used tires. I got them from Dick. I got them from Mike. I got them from your grandpa. I got them from Brian. And I ran used tires for a lot of years. And, and the car slipped and slid around, and I learned to drive it that way, and I mean, yeah, and all like your grandpa and Brian would say, don't bring them back here, don't bring the tires back when they're wore out. They're yours. Yeah. You take them, and so I did a lot of that, and back in 92 when I won the CWRA, your grandpa told me I was going to win it. And I'm like, I looked at him in the shop and said, how do you know that? And he goes, because you're used to driving on all them slippery tires. He said, and I was winning semi-features and everything. So I think it was.
And a lot of people back in those days really, I mean, it was a big deal to win a B feature, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had one night at Wausau. I didn't qualify good. I came late like I always do. And went out there and the car didn't bite. And I was in the B feature. And I made some changes in the car. And I ended up winning the B feature, and then I ended up winning the feature also that night. And I don't remember if it rained before I got up there or what, but I did that 2 times, I know, where I won both. So it was weird because when I started racing, there was only late models and super lates and hobby stocks. That was it. 2 classes. That's why you had so many cars. State Park Speedway had a Consi and a semi-feature and a feature, They had a lot of cars back in the day when I started.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, a lot of cars.
Yeah, that's one thing I think too. There's so many divisions nowadays.
Yep.
Options are great, but to what extent?
Yeah. And I've been looking for not that I've been a rich guy, but I mean I drove Mike Havel's car, really successful with that car. I mean won everything. I mean went down one night and beat everybody down at the Dells. I mean Joe Shear and Watson was there and I was pretty fired up, We had Les Bach doing the setup on the car along with Mike doing the shocks with Havel. And, yeah, we went down there and ended up winning a big race down there, 100-lapper, and that was quite a highlight. I wasn't trying to blow my own horn, but I got home, I'm like, wow. I mean, Jim Weber, I had everybody there, I had a lot of top names, that I ended up winning with that car. But that thing was just incredible. What they could do for me with that. That's where I really learned that shocks are really important. But
that was like a red and white car, right?
Yep, red and white. Yep, and then eventually it was blue and white.
Okay.
We had Point Beer on there for a sponsor.
Yeah. Okay.
So and then Quality Plus Printing back in the day, and everybody pitched in and helped out and did. We had quite a big crew to go racing with. So yeah, it was a fast car. I jumped in that because my motor broke. And it would be the year that John Zimmerman won the track championship at the Dells. And we rolled in there. Mike Savage was driving it at Golden Sands. And then Mike Havel had put my seat in it. And then I ran it at Dells on Saturday. And we won the last 5 or 6 features at the Dells. So, and the other one I got second in. So
what years were you running that car?
Trying to think because it was Brian's car, and I had a Lumina body on it. So I'm not sure what year that was, but and then I broke the motor, and the motor went to Wagner's. Well, they fixed the motor, and I started winning all them features down there with Havel's car. And then everybody every night I won, they tried to DQ me because we had rear end in there. It was cambered for the radial recaps. And they told us we couldn't come back with it. And then Mike said, oh, okay. So they figured they got rid of me. And they had people bitching that the car was cheated up or whatever, but it really wasn't. It's just the setup them guys put in it and the springs. And I ran a bump spring on the left rear with that car so I could drive it right down into the corner at Dells, and that thing would come off. It just like tip over. As soon as it leaned over, I knew I could get right back on the throttle and thing would just hook all the way out of the corner. It was a fast car. So we raced Golden Sands on Friday night, and then I was tired. I trucked all week. So then Havel looked at me and said, well, we got to go to Club Forest. I'm like, what? we're going to Dell's tomorrow, He'd go to Club Forest and have a few beers or something to eat, and then he'd go home. And by the time I get there in the morning, he had the rear end changed in it. He bought a brand new rear end, straight up rear end, and put it in the car. He had to take the dry sump tank down and all that, and take that all apart and change that rear end just to go to Dell's. And that was a lot of work for Mike. He worked his butt off. Him and Dewey and Jerry, and I mean, I had a good crew, And by the time I get there, it'd be about time to scale, and they got it all done, and ready for me to hop in and scale, and then off to Dell's we'd go. So we pulled in at Dell's and opened the doors, and they were like, "No, you can't run that car here. We DQ'd you. You can't come back." And Mike's like, "Oh, check the rear end." So they checked it, and it was all good to go. Without one another feature with it. So I got one feature there that I should have won for some big money, and the power steering line broke. And on the back cars, it runs off the rear end, and the braided line broke, and it set the car on fire. I only had 2 corners to go to win it. And Mike was worried about me, which I appreciate. He told me, pull over and get out of the car. It's on fire. Well, the minute I stopped, the fire went out. So I ended up losing that race,
Was that like when they were, I can't remember what they called that series back then. Was that when they were doing like the big 200 lappers and stuff? Was it one of those races?
Well, they had the Wisconsin Challenge Series, but this was just a weekly show.
Okay.
Weekly show special that they had.
Okay.
So, yeah, I should have never stopped. I'm crazy enough to know better. I shouldn't have listened to them.
I thought maybe you were going to say you couldn't drive without power steering.
Oh, no, I could drive it without power steering, but I should have never stopped. It paid like 4,000 or 3,500 to win that, and I'm 2 corners away. I don't care if it was on. That would have been a cool picture across start finish line with on fire like that, because it was really flaming back there.
Kirby Kurth lights up the field at the Dells.
Yeah. So, but Mike always worried about me in the car and stuff, and it's and that was cool. If it would have been me, I probably would have just kept going. But anyhow,
you're talking about trucking. What got you into trucking? Did you start trucking right out of high school? Did you want to be like John Bovee? Is that why you started trucking?
No, I don't think John was trucking then. Well, okay. He did. He had a dump trailer and stuff, but no, that wasn't it. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, and then Bob Lukey was a friend of mine, and we always went out to the lake lot out there on the weekends and camped out with my cousin out there, and Bob always drove truck, and then I didn't know what I was going to do with myself, and then I bought an older truck and ran around it and stayed here hauling some potatoes and stuff, and then opportunity came to buy a over-the-road truck, and I bought that, a new Peterbilt. And then I thought, well, I'll race when I can race. So I'm gonna go see the country, So I went to Niagara Falls and I went to Boston, Mass, and I've been all over with that truck down to Dallas, and so that's how I just started doing it, And now I stay close to home with my truck,
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
What do you think about the way that a lot of the truckers drive, or how they dress nowadays? You go to a truck stop, and
I usually don't go to the truck stop. No,
stay away from those.
No, I had a funny thing, racing that Slinger in 1992 or 93. Robbie Reiser and I got into it down there, and I used a bumper on Reiser to move him, and he got mad at me because I did that. I knocked him out of the way. He was having a bad night. He wasn't going nowhere, so I moved him. And then we got in a big fight in the pits afterwards. So I had the semi back then, so I'm parked right by him. And then anyway, so we had a big blowout there, and then we kind of didn't talk to each other after that, And so anyway, I'm down in Alabama, and all of Robbie's in charge of Roush, and I pull into the truck stop to get fuel, and it's all Roush semi sitting there. So I walked up to the guy in front of me. I said, "Hey, you going to talk to Robbie Reiser today yet?" And he goes, looks at me kind of funny. He's fueling up, and he goes, "Yeah, I got to call him." I says, "Hey, tell him that Kirby said hi." And and he's like, "Okay, I'll tell him." And then he pulls his truck ahead for me so I can pull up and start fueling. He comes walking back to me, and he goes, "What kind of trouble am I going to get into when I say this to him?" I said, "Just tell him." I told him I'm from Wisconsin. I'm friends with him. I said, "Tell him I said hi," because he was running the Roush deal down there. So I don't know if the guy ever did or not, but it was pretty funny to be way down there.
That surprised him, yeah.
Yeah. probably thinking, what's he saying that for, But yeah, that's pretty cool.
Now I know that the one thing I remembered in your racing career, there was a year where you strung a couple championships together, right?
Yep.
What year was that?
1992. Chet's favorite year.
Chet's favorite year.
Yeah,
I was going to leave him out of that, but you said it.
Yeah. No, I had a good year that year, and that was with my Rander car.
Okay, I thought that maybe was with the Bach car, but no, okay.
No, and the Bach car was involved in it, after that. But I mean, I wrecked that car down at the Dells, and that's the hardest I ever hit a wall in my whole career was down at Dells. It broke a lower ball joint down there and just swung the car, made a right-hand turn right past the pit entrance. I hit the wall head on. And next day I had black and blue legs, and I'm like, I didn't hit nothing with my legs, They must have went up under the dash. I don't know. I just hit hard. My eyes hurt in the sockets. I hit hard. And then my dad panicked right away because I was leading points everywhere, He's like, well, you got to go get Brian's car, And I said, no, we'll fix this one, And he's like, no. Then that's when he actually went and made the deal and bought your Uncle Brian's car for me,
Okay.
So, yeah, that car, I don't know. I won the CWRA that year, championship, and that was through Kaukauna and all over. And then,
oh, really?
Yeah, we ran Kaukauna for the Tournament of Speed. That was a CWRA show there, and West Salem was part of it, and Dells and Wausau and Golden Sands. So that all them tracks were, and I'm not sure. I don't think maybe Marshfield was still dirt, but whatever the series was, I ran every show. And yeah, that was the car you could, I don't know what it was with that car. It was a real special car. So I think I got thrown out of Rander car too because I went over and wanted to build another one just like it, and Randerson was already building his own chassis by then, So that's when Alan Quickie was around. That I had that car and worked next to Alan at Rander car with that thing. So
okay.
He had his yellow WLPX car in there, and I was in the next stall, and Randerson's was at Mike Randerson's house. He had a shop there. He built some fast cars out of there. So
now hanging around a lot of what made you go with Rander car? Was it just got a deal on a car?
Out of money. Yeah, out of money. I needed a car, and Steve Malgibby had another deal on a car. And, and Steve had it all set up and rolling. When I got there, the bumper was welded on it crooked, and I said to Steve, that's not right, He said, yeah, it is, because he gave me the chassis heights, and he says when it's all motors in it, it's all on the ground, the nose will be straight, And he's really good at what he does. He had a tow hook out there that was like a push bar, and I hit Bob Fox with that car down at Slinger. There was a wreck in front of us, and Bob stopped, and I come off the corner, and I couldn't see what was going on in the straightaway. I rear-ended Bob's brand new car and folded it right up, and that push bar tow hook just like cut right through his car almost, And I started my car up and backed up and went in and pulled the fenders out and finished the feature, It couldn't hurt it. It was a pretty tough car.
So that 92. And CWRA, and then State Park
and Golden Sands.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got to go to the Wisconsin Fans for Auto Racing banquet right when Alan got killed in the plane crash.
Okay.
He was supposed to be there with us.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and then Doc was down there. Doc gave me my award. And I had Paps for a sponsor then, so I had pretty good money. And that's another thing Dick helped me with, too. He had 2 people on the phone at once in the shop, and I was just hanging out there and ended up with a Pap sponsorship and all the beer I could drink. So,
hey, speaking of Pabst Blue Ribbon,
yeah,
you told me no on a beer when I first offered it to you, but
yep.
I don't know if I've ever had a beer with you, Kirby. So
there we
might as well make it a Pabst. Usually I do these in the morning. This one's in the evening. So,
yep. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kirby. Thanks for coming.
Yep. Oh, you're welcome. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun through all my years. I'm still having fun. Had a lot of fun with your Uncle Brian, did some crazy stuff. Broke a steering arm at Kaukauna, and I didn't have no bolts with me, so I go over to your Uncle Brian, and I get a bolt out of his cabinet, and I told him I'm only going to make one lap to get paid, and in the semi-feature, and got the green flag, and I was leading, and I was pulling away from everybody, so I stayed out there. And that might have been one of the Novas that was, earlier in my career. Yeah, I think he couldn't believe I stayed out there. And when I ended up winning the thing, I only had one bolt holding the steering arm on. When I came in, it was dragging on the track. And he says to me, well, you're going to end up hitting the wall if that thing breaks, And I went over and talked to Dick, and he didn't have no bolts. And I asked your grandpa, and he didn't have any. And so I got them from Brian and put them in there. And the steering arm had a bolt going through the spindle, and then the back one.
Yeah.
Well, the back one broke. And Dick said, use a softer bolt. It'll flex a little bit, And I was only supposed to make a lap, and I stayed out there and won the thing. And the steering arm was dragging right on the ground. I think he probably thought I was crazy.
Did you worry about that the whole race?
No, because it was left front. Then your uncle said, well, if that breaks, you're going to go right in the wall. And I'm like, no, it's on the left front. So I don't know. I made it. I don't know. I later on made up a slow-moving vehicle sign. I was sneaking that on the cars. If they had a bad night, I'd sneak over there. I still got it. It's got a little S hook on it. I got Bobby T with it. I got Bobby T waving. Then we're at Kakana. I got slow-moving vehicle triangle hanging on the back of his spoiler. You don't know what's on there,
Like a big triangle or just a...
Like the Amish have on the back of their wagon, slow-moving vehicle. Then I put my name on it with a piece of tape because I didn't want no one to throw it away. I wanted to get it back, And I hung that on your... Brian was struggling at Golden Sands one night. He snuck over there and hung that on the back of there. He's about ready to kill me, I think.
I never heard that either.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we goofed around and did some stuff, It's, took him to the bar one night. Him and I, your grandpa's car, someone watered down the fuel cell, put water in his gas.
No kidding.
So I don't know if him and Jim Bach were at the bar somewhere or what. I can't remember, but I just remember we took the fuel cell all apart. I went over and helped your grandpa. Took the fuel cell all apart. When we had the car tilted and we were running electric fuel pump on it, and it was just water coming out of there, and we were at like a glass jar like that. I kept looking at the water.
Did he take it to the races and had issues? And
Yep.
Is that how he found it? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, somebody watered him down. So then Pete started taping. That was on the open truck. So then Pete and I started taping the fuel cap in a certain way that if somebody took the tape off and watered the car down, we would know, that our tape wasn't right, So we kind of had that going on. So Golden Sands, it was raining, and I was leading the feature, and your uncle was behind me, and I always had a deal with Brian that, if you're faster than me, move me. I'm not going to get mad. I'm friends with you guys like family, And that happened. And he kind of moved me, bumped me a little bit, and he went on and won, and I got second or third, whatever I ended up. And then I said to Brian, I go, let's go down to, his sponsor was Wookiees at the time. So I says, let's go to Wookiees, but I don't want to take our cars down there. So let's drop them at the shop and then just take your Bronco and go down there, So we did. And we're sitting at the bar, and there's a girl there that I knew from Buren, and she's looking at her watch, and she's like, 10:30. Aren't you guys racing tonight? And I said, we're done already, So I had your uncle sitting next to me at the bar. It's his sponsor. And we get a beer, and we're sitting there, and she goes, well, how did you do? And I said, I would have won the feature, but I said, Brian Reffner hit me from behind him, shoved me out of the way, and she goes, oh, I hate him. And Brian, your Uncle Brian's like, whoa, he got just wild.
I'm out of here.
Yep. We're not drinking no more here, he said. And then she says, who is that? And I said, that's Brian Reffner, and she just about killed me for that deal. I had a lot of fun with him. Yeah. So that's, my lifetime. It's been a lot of screwing around and having fun with everybody. And, so we're a fierce competition on the track, but always stayed friends, and we had kind of had that agreement, and one night at State Park, he asked me, how long were you going to follow so-and-so before you moved them? Because he was right behind me,
Sure.
So we needed to get through, but I finally waited. I don't know. I gave the guy 3 times to get out of the way, and then I moved him. So I don't know.
Apparently it was too long, huh?
Apparently it was too long. Yeah. And I mean, you had Chris Weinkoff on here and stuff. I was kind of hard on the Weinkoff boys at Golden Sands when I was younger. And I got to meet their mom. She come over and yelled at me, but I love them guys. I'm friends with them, and they turned out to really be some great racers. You know, they're both good drivers.
Yeah, because Chris said he started out spending a lot of time at the Dells, and I had never known him to start out running at the Dells a lot. So
yeah, and they were at Golden Sands a lot. That's, you know, and I don't know what I did to them there, but I probably shoved them out of the way or whatever, you know. You know, I was kind of, you know, and Mark Mackesy and I had our trouble. Gary Bach and I had our trouble, you know, and Gary one night, I spun Gary. I don't remember why I spun him, but anyway,
spun him on purpose or an accident?
I think on purpose I did, because I don't remember what was going on. And him and I were like almost like the same speed. But Gary's a great guy. You know, I love Gary too. And I'm just like, well, you get to your friends, you know, and Trickle's telling me, don't be friends with all these guys, you know, in case you got to move them, you know. But I don't remember what happened with Gary. But the following week, Gary spun me right where I spun him, and I went down through the infield at Golden Sands. And I stood on the gas, and I drove it wide open across the infield and came right back out in front of him. And they scored me ahead of him. When they paid me, he was just wild about that. And that was some fun times, you know. And one night I put a rubber mark on his brand new body on the quarter panel, big black rubber mark on a white car. And Gary got out in the pits, and I was parked down from him a little ways, and he got a big marker out, and he wrote Kirby on there with an arrow to the rubber mark. And then Albert come over, Getzloff, and grabbed my autograph markers and said, can I borrow one of these? And I said, yeah. And he went down by Gary's car, and he put I love on top of my name. And so it said, I love Kirby. Next thing, I see Gary out there trying to get that off the quarter panel. Some pretty cool stuff.
That's a very Albert story right
yeah,
there.
That's an Albert, yeah. Yeah, I've had a lot of them. So I think I should write a book on Albert. He's I've been with him and Victor in a lot of situations, you know, at bar time and all that. That's pretty good stuff, you know.
Well, Scott Jaschelski put a donut on on my truck on the side at the Dells. You know, he felt a little bad about it. Maybe I should put his name on the car with an arrow.
Yeah, you have to put a 21 sticker on there and then put an arrow down. Yeah.
Hey, he sent me a photo of a rub mark on right in front of his left rear. He goes, "Was this from you?" And I'm like, I have no clue. It could have been. I think he scraped it getting out of the trailer.
The truck series, I think, is going to be good for my kids. You know, it's a learning series, you know, for them. It's not a lot of high horsepower, and I mean, they can step up. The 602 does a good job, and Cole was, for coming out of the bandos, Cole did a good job last weekend. I told him, I don't care, just go get some laps and don't worry about me or where you finish or whatever. Just go out and finish. And in the B feature there, he started 16th and ended up 8th, so he was moving up.
Yeah.
So I mean, he did okay, but I mean, he caved the door in on the right side. He hit somebody, and
hey, you learn your boundaries eventually.
Oh, eventually, yeah. He's pretty aggressive too, you know. So
no, it's a great series. You know, in my real stepping stone between like 4-cylinders and super late models was a super stock. So you got the metric GM, you know, chassis, and you know, it's not really meant to go racing. And you know, we had some good horsepower in that thing, you know, more than what we have in the Midwest truck. But yeah, you know, it's a great stepping stone for someone. You know, you have a chassis that's not too far off a super late model. Yep. It's a tube chassis. The thing's made to go racing. It's easy to work on. You don't have these stock lower A-frames that, you know, in other parts, and 4-link suspension that suck to work on. And the thing's meant to go race and handles nice. And it's a good spot to be in, a good class to be in for sure.
Yeah. And when I started out with your grandpa and stuff, you know, back in 76, I only had one goal, was to win one feature. That was my only goal. So I've surpassed that, of course, but I never expected to, you know, I did it cheap all the way, and I still am. I'm a tightwad when it comes to buying stuff. I either get a deal on it or you know, and you know, this 4-cylinder I bought to run, it's race ready, and the guy came down and just told me, give me $1,000 for it. So it's all, Cole drove it right up on the trailer with all the race wheels on it and everything. I mean, that's a good deal for a 4-cylinder car. And to tell you the truth, I had more fun with that 4-cylinder when I had that other 99, that Ford Escort I had just had a blast.
And you won on Larry Deachin's Memorial Night with that, right?
I did, yep. That was my third one. I won 2 with the super late model.
Okay.
And then Scott Wimmer called me up and said, come on up because we're going to take some photos. And I was joking around as I usually am. And I said, well, maybe I'm getting in for free. I'll bring my 4-cylinder. And he's like, bring it up. Then I go out there and I end up winning the feature, with the 4-cylinder, and
do you remember what years you won the Larry Deachens Memorial?
92 again, I think, or 93.
Okay.
And then I think 97, I think I won it again.
Okay.
So I didn't win it by much. It was tight. A tight point battle.
And where were those Larry Deachens races held at? Were those at State Park?
All at State Park.
All at State Park, okay.
Yep.
Because then there was a string of years with the Deachens was at Plover, right?
I don't know if it was ever there or not. I don't remember running it there, but
okay.
Breitenfeld was winning. Wayne Breitenfeld was winning a lot of them back then, and then I got a couple of them, and then the third one was with the 4-cylinder, So I was like, oh, I gotta keep buying different cars and coming back and trying to win in different divisions, But yeah, it was fun up there that night, So it's one of them things. Just get in there and go have fun, Trickle was there, and Dick told me, he said, good thing you're a big boy. I said, why is that? He said, the 2 left side wheels were off the ground and 1 and 2. And I said, no, they weren't. And he said, yeah, you were going to roll it over. I said, no. I drove it wide open down into the turn at Wausau, and bounced it off the inside, So, yeah, I don't know. I don't believe it was on 2 wheels, but I haven't rolled over yet. So
that's good.
Yeah, I got this year to try that again. So.
Well, don't do that.
I don't want to do that.
Keep it on all fours in between the fences.
Well, the kids I bought modifieds for the kids, and they looked at them, but Chase is like, I don't want that open wheel car. He's afraid he's going to run into somebody and flip over or whatever, and I said, well, stay away from them, go run it and stay away,
What made you want to get a modified?
I used to have one on the dirt at Marshfield.
Okay.
And I absolutely loved the thing. I just had a ball with it on the dirt. And, I've only got one feature win on the dirt. I got a car from, it was Pete Parker's old car that I got through Chuck Appolito. And I had to go down to Butch Mehrendorf's and pick it up. It was in the garage down there. That's where I left my Bemco Nova. I ended up buying that car from Chuck. I dropped off my Bemco Nova there with the chrome wheels and stuff on it, and I loaded that car out of Lake Mills down there and brought it back up home. But
were you racing on dirt and asphalt all at the same time? Okay.
Yeah, Joe Krakowski got me to come over to Marshfield because he was having a ball out there. He was actually
Joe ran on the dirt.
Joe ran on the dirt. He's the reason I went to Marshfield.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Joe was on the dirt, and he said, you got to come over here and run on the dirt. He goes, this is fun. Well, Joe had a hole in the floor, the firewall, and every lap, the clay was going in his floorboard, and his throttle wouldn't go all the way to the floor because he was packing dirt, and I drove right by him and won the B feature at Marshall with my Nova. And, so I was up there. We were actually on the treaded McCurry's up there on the dirt with asphalt tires.
Okay.
And windshields. So the windshield would get pretty full, pretty muddy.
So why didn't you just buy a dirt modified? Why'd you buy an asphalt modified?
Well, I got dirt modifieds at home. So I got 4 mods sitting there.
What don't you have?
We got 11 cars. Yeah, for a while I took my left-hander apart and made the truck out of that.
Yeah.
And then Penn Sauter was going to get a truck. So Cole said right away, well, Penn's getting a truck, and they were buddies from Bando Racing. So
okay, cool, yeah.
It's like, okay, well then I was down picking up some wheels for a guy in Watertown, and Dan Henning was moving this truck chassis around, and I was kidding him, as I always am, joking around, just put it in my trailer. I'll take it home and get it out of your way, because he had to get on the forklift and move it to get the wheels out. Then he called whoever owned it, and I had $400 cash on me. That's all I had. And I says, tell the guy I'll give him $400 for it, and I'll get it out of here. And the guy knew me, whoever it was. I still don't know who it was. It might have been Dorr. He might have owned it.
Okay.
And anyway, he said, well, if Kirby wants it, sell it to him. So that's how I got the truck chassis. So it ended up being Gajewski's truck.
Okay.
One of theirs. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, that's how we got the chassis, left-hander chassis. And we took my white Super Late apart and put the rear end and everything and all the pedals and brakes and everything in the truck. So that's how we ended up building that. So I got a left-hander chassis sitting there at home with a body on it, sitting on the ground. So, and it's an older one, you know, but it's all straight, nice car, you know. But I was being cheap. I didn't want to buy everything again. So I just like, well, we'll just take this and make the truck. So that's what we did. So,
Gotcha. When did you first get a semi-trailer for racing?
I don't remember what year I got that either. I bought the truck from Moody here in Stevens Point. It was one of Dave Moody's trucks I bought. And the cube van, my crew guys, nobody wanted to work on the cube van. So we were leaving for Dell's, and we got down when I lived on Hollywood Road. We went down Z to go to Dell's. And I'm going down by Devil's Elbow down there, and the cube van's rattling. I'm looking, and it's overheating, and it's got no oil pressure, and I'm like, oh, great. So I pulled over and opened the hood. There was no oil on the dipstick, and there was no water in the radiator. So I asked Ken, this guy that was helping me, I said, did you not hear me when I said, you know, check the cube van oil and stuff? And he's like, oh, I forgot about it. So I decided right there, and then I was sitting there on quart number 4 of oil putting in it to get it on the dipstick and get it up to, I was sitting on the side of the road with the flashers on. Boomer pulled up, and Boomer was going to the Dells just in his pickup, and he said, hey, Curb, don't pay to have a fast race car if you can't get it to the track. So I decided after that year I would sell the cube van and the enclosed trailer. Wayne Breitenfeld bought it from me, and I got the semi, and I bought the trailer out of Junction City, and I worked for Ruan then hauling tankers. So we had catwalk, and I just cut the wheel well out of it with all the air out of it and flipped the wheel well over and made it a ramp so the car could go up in there.
Okay.
And put catwalk in there. And then I knew that in the spring, if I put antifreeze and oil in the semi, it would run 50,000 miles and never have to change oil in it, you know, and we used it to go to the races. That's how that all came about, was just because nobody wanted to take care of the cube van, you know. And I paid $3,500 for the trailer, and I think I paid $3,500 for the truck. And I used it all them years. Then Steve Livernash came over and did the flag and stuff on it.
Oh, so he painted the whole thing.
He painted it all by hand. Yeah, he come over with an overhead projector, and Steve was just outstanding at what he does.
Yeah. And
he laid that out. It was dusk, getting dark, and he put the overhead projector on and lined the flag up on it, got up there with a pencil and marked it all.
That's how he did that.
And he painted it for me. Yeah, and I don't think he charged me for it because it was his first big project that he ever did like that. It turned out great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, you must have been, I mean, was there anyone else having a semi-trailer out there?
No, I was the first one. I'm the one that started all this.
Yeah, look at you. Everyone started spending money because of you.
I think the only other person that had a semi that I parked with at Madison was Brian Hoppy.
Okay.
And when he drove, you know, for the guy who owns the company there, Gildan.
Gildan, okay.
Yeah, for John Beal Sr.
Yep.
He had that semi. So that was the next one. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun with all this.
You started quite the trend then.
Yeah. It seemed like everybody got them after that. When I went to Florida, I took that all the way to Florida and ran New Smyrna and all that down there that one year too.
Really?
Yep. Took it down there. Went down with no permits. Only had license and insurance on it. So
did you just go like run a regular race down there, or was it a bigger
Speed Weeks?
Oh, you ran Speed Weeks. Okay.
Yeah. And I had both cars going down there, and Dick stopped over to the house when I lived in Nakusa, and he was looking. I had that thing had where you could lock everything into the wall, and I had the car going right across the first car going across the workbench, and I had that all strapped down in there. I had E-Track in there, and I just used my aluminum ramps and drove the car right up on there, way up to the front. And Dick come over to the house, and he's like, "Why do you have 2 cars in here?" And I said, probably gonna need them both, you know. 'Cause I went to Volusia County first, you know, and ran at Volusia, and then I went down to New Smyrna after that. Later in the week, I went to New Smyrna. That's how I met.
Was this in the 90s?
Yeah, that's how I met. That was like 91, before my big year in 92. I went down and got the cobwebs out in 91. So I met Rick Corelli. I parked next to Rick. And Marshall Chesbrown that owned all Rick Corelli stuff. Got to know all them guys real well. And
no kidding. I didn't know you went down there and ran.
Yep. And cool. I only had one set of tires. So I bought one new set of tires. And then Marshall Chesbrown let me run Rick's tires while I was there, because Rick would run the regular race, the feature.
Okay.
And I would run that too, but I told him I'm just down here for me to shake the cobwebs out, because they bought all their tires in one night and mounted them all and scuffed them all. So, yeah, I got to know them guys real well.
Now, in those years, who did you have for crew guys helping you?
Guy from Point right here, Ed Leby, he was my service manager, and then his girlfriend came along.
Okay.
And I had them two went to Florida with me, and I drove down there, and, it was just us three.
Okay. And did they help you up here in Wisconsin, all the races and everything?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, okay. Ed did a lot helping me out, and he was my service manager at Rouen. So, so yeah, he came along and helped. And then I had regular guys around here. Eric Nelson helped all the time, and Roger Scanlon.
Okay, sure.
They were with me all the time too.
Cool.
So I had them guys, and Dwayne Vitrone. Dwayne helped out, and Gary Schrader. So, and so Gary did a lot for me too. He helped out a lot financially. So I appreciate everything everybody did for me. It's not over with yet.
Takes a lot to keep going 49 years.
Yeah, and I keep finding a way to do it. I mean, it's the cheap way, like I say, a used motor. And actually, Gary Bach told me, "Why are you taking your engine in every year and getting it freshened?" And I said, "What do you mean? You have to." Gary's like, "No, I've run this motor for 3 years." I'm like, "Really?" And he told me he waits for the oil to come out of the breathers, then he'll think about freshening it. And Gary saved me a lot of money by telling me that, because I quit taking my engines to the engine builder, So.
Yeah, I know, when I first started super late model racing, 9-to-1s were still really popular. And, I mean, if it wasn't for those LS motors that Wagner builds that, I could run 3 seasons on, it'd have been really tough to go as long as I have with my super late. So, being able to have a little longevity in a motor is huge.
Well, that's where I like the crate motors too. I've had a crate motor I just ran forever, and Frank Nitschke ran his for, 10 or 11 years, it finally slowed down, but he had to bank some pretty good money along the way, because he wasn't doing nothing to it but running it. He was always fast at Golden Sands on the outside. He's always there, So, that kind of made me a believer in the crate motor, And 602s that we have in the trucks, I really like them. They're easy to take in and out, and, you're not messing around with dry sump lines and all that. And I'm getting lazy in my old age, so I love my cars with the 604s, and I'm just put them in and go. And I think Mark Mackesy had a 604 that he won with, and he really liked it too,
Yeah, when I went from the 60 LS to that 5.3, and I was like, I didn't have these dry sump lines running to the back. I'm like, man, this is weird again,
Yeah, because it gets, to me, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older. And I'm tired when I come home now, and I just don't want to mess with it, And then when this asphalt mod came up for sale, I already had 3 other mods already bought. And each car, I had a guy walk up to me at Slinger and say, "Hey, I've got a powder-coated modified that we're not going to run. I heard you're looking for some mods. You want to buy one of ours, And I'm like, "No, not really, He goes, "Well, it's right across the street, across 41. And I'm like, "Well, I'll come and look at it, So after the races, we went and looked at it, and I told him, I said, "Well, what are you thinking you got to have for it, $900, he said. That's with the brakes and everything on it, and the seat in it and all that, and the gauges. I'm like, "Well, I'm taking that." So we came back the next day and got it, It's like, wow. So I've been cheap with the mods. I got another friend of mine. He had a mod sitting alongside his garage. He kept going by it with the semi all the time. I finally called him and said, "What are you going to do with that?" He said, "Well, Dad and I are racing at Beaver Dam, so I'm not going to do nothing with it." He goes, "If you want to buy it, And he gave me a deal on that one too. That body and everything on it for $700. I couldn't go wrong. So I got 2 of them. And the last one I paid $1,000 for. And the one I'm racing now has got all the asphalt hubs and everything on it. That was $2,500, and I had to go over to Low Bennett's and get that out of their garage. They had it over there.
Okay.
So, and that was regular asphalt mod. They were setting fast time with it and everything at Slinger. So it's a nice little car. $2,500, I couldn't go wrong. So I've been cheapening my racing up again. So
why don't you just concentrate on one instead of having so many?
I like the variety.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it that if I'm home now on a Friday, I can go to Toma with Chase and go run with Chase, and I can see if I can beat my own kid, and it may make a better driver out of him, saying, that because my car is his car.
Maybe you need a truck too.
I don't fit in a truck. So
they're 1500s. Maybe you just need like an F-250 or something.
Yeah, maybe, move the cage back in it. Maybe I need to build my own truck, yeah. The truck would be fun. I actually had my seat in the truck, but then I went trucking, and I came home, and my seat was gone, and Cole's seat was in it. So that's kind of how that went with the truck. And I figured, well, he's almost 6'4", and and he's squeezing in the truck, but he's thin, he's not big like me,
He's that tall?
He is that tall now. He couldn't run the bando last year because his head was above the cage. He had the seat all the way tipped in and all the way to the floor, and his knees are right in the dash, and he couldn't drive it. So we never ran the bando that much last year. So we put it up for sale and sold it. So
growing like a weed. I didn't realize he was that tall. Wow.
He is growing. Yeah, he's growing. He had to order that driving suit he got from you.
Okay.
He don't fit in it. He had to order another one. So he's got that up for sale. He bought your driving suit.
Oh yeah, that was last year. Yeah.
Last year, yeah. So anyway, yeah, he's growing yet. He better stop pretty soon. We'll have to put a bubble in the roof of the truck.
Yeah. There's a lot of headroom in those. That's perfect for him.
Yeah. So I got him a new helmet and everything with the speakers in it, and he really likes that. And we got a new set of radios, so he can hear me real well, and I can hear him real well. And
nothing better than having your dad on the radio.
Yeah, telling you, cut him off. No. The kids, and Chase is working. He's 18, going on 19, so he's working for Advanced Auto. And so he's busy, being at work, and he's just kind of happy with his 4-cylinder. And so we'll let him just run that if he's content there. But he's been peaking in my super late, so I might have to get him out there and let him hot lap with that.
Oh, boy. Hey, like I said, got a motor for sale.
Yep, I know you do. Yep. Empty the shop out, then you won't have nothing to run.
Now, you talked about running for Mike Havel.
Yep.
Who else did you all run for? Because I know you ran. I can't remember his name now. It was Dick Brescia. Brescia. Okay.
Yep. That was the Miller Lite car down at the Dells.
Okay.
Number 8.
Yep.
And then I actually ran Brian Severson's car, the 5 car, and won down at the Dells with that. So I had fun with that too. I had Jeff Kendall right on my right on my butt, and I drove through the 3 and 4 for the checkered flag like an old grandma because I knew Jeff wasn't going to take the promoter's car out. So Severson owned the Dells. And,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and Jeff caught me, and I got a picture somewhere. He's got me lifted right off the ground. And I just waited for him to hit the brakes and let me down so I could go get the checkered flag, so I won with that, and that was number 5. So I drove. That was a Ford. That was one of Rich Bickle's cars, a RBR chassis that I won with. That and Port City car. But I think Rich had leaned the bar back and gave me some room inside there when he built that. It was a fast car. And so I won with that. And then Havel's car, and then Brescia's. And then drove for Mike Cox way in younger years when Ronnie Waite had open heart surgery, and Mike bought him my Nova. And then I ended up driving number 98. I ended up driving that at Golden Sands, so I drove my own car there. But Ronnie had a motor in there and stuff, So did a little bit for Mike Cox and did some testing for some people and got close to a NASCAR ride. Actually had a whole shop out in Mishawaka, Indiana that we had 2 short track cars, 2 intermediate cars, and 2 super speedway cars. And Dick was actually going to run the super speedway cars. And then we had Whirlpool for a sponsor, and then the sponsor pulled out on the guy that owned it.
Would that have been like the Busch series or Cup?
Yeah, would have been the Busch series back then. Okay. Yeah, brand new cars. Really nice shop, and then we had to move we were going to move everything down to North Carolina, and our Whirlpool sponsor ended up leaving us before we got going. We had 2 of the cars lettered, so they had a test track around the building in Mishawaka, and the crew was all volunteer guys. I took Ed Holmes out there to the shop and showed Ed what was going on.
Okay.
The guy's name was G.J. Bickle, and no relation to Rich. It was spelled different, but I called Rich and made sure he was no relation. I had a couple semis on the road, and my driver was delivering there, and Bick was on the phone with NASCAR, and then my driver gave him my name, said I was a race driver, and he had me come out and test. So I had Kyle Petty's old mellow yellow Pontiac with a super late motor in it, and them guys were going to do pit stops. And I got off the track, was flat, and around his building, and he would announce, don't come outside to smoke or anything, tell all the people inside, we're going to test. So I went around the building like crazy, and I come off of turn 4, and he's got a regular pit stop thing set up there. And I got the right rear off in the grass, and I never lifted. I just kept it sideways and shot it right at them guys, and they all threw everything down and ran away. And I stopped for my pit stop on my mark where I was supposed to, and there was no one there to service the car. So all they said to me is, "You're nuts." I said, "I'm not nuts. You're supposed to change my tires. I'm where I'm supposed to be." It was pretty funny. It was people that worked in his building.
Okay.
So he was like a one-stop apartment complex place where you bought all your bathroom stuff from him and your foundation, and then he came up and put your apartments up.
Okay.
So, but that was Metro Motorsports. I don't think it ever got off the ground. He had one other kid that was going to drive there with us, and it never got off the ground that I'm aware of. So Ed and I went back home then. So, but
gotcha.
Yeah, so a little bit would have made some NASCAR. Back in that day, it would have been fun to run some of that. So
yeah. No, it's always tough when you hear this. A lot of people, or a handful of people have those stories of being close to something like that, and it doesn't take much for it to fall through.
Well, Rich Bickle said he got to the point where they wrote him a check for $500,000, and the check didn't clear. And he's had his up and downs through the NASCAR thing, but at least he made it in some of the shows. That's still something in the back of my mind. If I would win the lottery, I definitely would go get an ARCA car and try to run a couple ARCA shows yet, even as old as I am. So I still feel young. Lost 90 pounds here, so I'm still working at it. Drinking beer ain't going to help me. But
I'm sorry. Well, congratulations on the 90 pounds. I'm sorry I'm not helping you.
Yeah, I was up to 409 pounds, and I'm down just about below 300 now. So, I've been working at it, but when you're driving truck and the weather hasn't been good. I haven't been walking like I normally was. So
those Wisconsin winters make that a little harder.
Yeah, it does. Yep. And in getting home late don't help either. If I'm running around and stayed here and I don't get home till, I had a rule I don't eat past 7:00. So, and I won't eat tonight because we'll still be here till 9. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, let me text the wife. I'll have her bring something down.
No, that's. Yeah, but I've been my whole life and watched you come up. It's kind of the Reffner family to me has been your your grandma's been great to me. Everybody's, and Baird and Sherry, it's been a lot of fun. I don't think I'd ever go back and change it for anything the way it went. It don't matter if I was high dollar or cheap or whatever. And, so I still have that Miller car. I still race that. That's what I put your body on.
Okay.
So that car is an 89 Rander car, a 99 Rander car, and I'm still running. Still a good old car. So,
have you ever thought about building something on the newer side?
Yeah, I thought about it, but until I priced it.
So it usually stops the guy at that point.
That stops me, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about buying, I'd have to get a deal on it somewhere, But I was thinking about, buying a no more lightweight chassis because the weight rule when I was heavier, 5842 just kills me. I end up way over gross weight, and the modified 58-42, and I went down to the Dells meeting and argued about that. It should be 60-40, but that thing scales right out with me in that modified, so we're okay with that. CWRA is 60-40 on weight rule, and trucks are 60-40. So I like 60-40. I think bigger driver, I think you get more guys in it if they knew they could scale it. A lot of the big guys dropped out. And the weight rule has something to do with it. And then talked to Ed Holmes about getting a new chassis, and they said, well, Bubba Pollard can do it. And Ed said, yeah, we need a lightweight chassis, lightweight fuel cell, lightweight rear end, and then we can run 58-42, and then got to get an LS motor, and you got to catch up with the times. I'm kind of out of the times. So.
What keeps you wanting to keep racing? Why race for 49 years and not just say no and just help the kids?
Well, I've been kind of that way, but I still got the drive to do it.
Yeah.
Once that leaves me, then and the kids, Cole does all the work. Him and Chase, they're out in the shop slaving away. Before I came here tonight, I said my pedals need to be moved in my modified. They need to be moved ahead. They're too close for me. And so I just told them to measure the super late and move the pedals ahead in the mod, And Cole's doing a lot of my work, He's taking a lot of pressure off of me. So, it's not like I got to live in the shop every night,
Yeah.
So now I can watch Seinfeld. I can sit in my lazy boy chair and put my feet up and watch Seinfeld, I guess. So I don't do nothing else. We did snowmobile, but for the last couple of years, we haven't had snow. And I sold my house I had up in Hurley. So it's like, now we look at the snowmobiles, we don't feel like going, Everybody chases working, and, he comes home, he's tired, and I'm tired from the week. And it's like, don't want to throw them on the trailer and go up there and ride on bumpy trails if they don't groom them,
Yeah.
And then the expense of the 3 snowmobiles and all the trail passes and everything,
Hotels,
that's gotten real expensive, you know. And it's like, well, okay, we'll stay home and work on race cars,
I meant to ask, was there anything else when you were a kid that you were into? Did you play any sports or?
No, lived at the Reffner shop.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I had Louis Bennett's wanted me to wrestle, and he told me it was either wrestle or it was football. He wanted me to play football at Lincoln. I graduated in 79, and I was already racing in 76. And he told me practice is Thursday after school. And I'm like, I'm racing State Park Speedway, you know? He's like, well, you're either gonna play football or you're gonna race. I said, well, I'm out of here. So I went back and worked on my car.
Yeah, I think football was the first sport that I dropped, and then baseball was the next one that I dropped. That was my next favorite behind racing that I liked, and I dropped that one once I went super late model racing. But I'll make choices.
Yeah, and you started out in the lower class too with your sportsman car and stuff, and you had 4-cylinder too. I forgot about that. Yeah. So you went up 3 divisions too. So I think I just got to find something that's the mod's cheap to run. Got a crate motor in it. Start it up and drive it around, and stuff. And the tires are the Hoosier tires on it, the D800s, and they seem to wear like iron on that mod.
Okay.
So I don't think I'm going to be buying a lot of tires for that. The group of guys I race with are a lot of fun. So I just really thought it'd be cool to get a modified again, and run a mod, And I actually had the new mod there that I haven't run yet. Then the one at Bennett's came up for sale, and I stopped on that one then and went and got that one.
Okay.
Because Cole said, Dad, all you got to do is put a motor in it. I was like, oh, okay, So I don't know. I enjoy different competition. Not that I got to be on top anymore, but just getting out there, racing with them guys, even the 4-cylinders. Nobody makes the same lap twice. That makes it more fun. You don't know what they're going to do. Sometimes you're 5 wide. At Golden Sands, we've been 5 wide. I'm like, oh my God, we're coming to the corner. What's going to happen? And I actually had a lot of fun with that.
Okay.
So it's I don't know. Racing's in your blood, and it's what you do, and it's kind of hard to walk away from.
Yeah.
I could have sold my super late, and I was like, well, Abby Crone and her dad bought my other super late. So I had 3 of them. They got rid of one. So that's a Rander car that they have up there too.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I think she'll run that at Marshfield. But she's been winning with the 4-cylinder car at Marshfield. So I think she's been having fun too. And so, yeah, I actually got a modified from them too. They got off the dirt and went asphalt racing. So
Okay.
I bought their other mod that Dustin had, her dad. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. When do you quit? I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'd do with myself if I do quit.
Would you ever try dirt racing again?
Thought about it, yeah. But now we got Beaver Dam. I wanted to really run at Beaver Dam, and that's closing down this year. So,
Is it really?
Yeah, Beaver Dam's sold, and they're going to tear it apart. So, and that's about like Golden Sands on the dirt, you know. I'm going to try to hit all the sprint car shows over there because I really am crazy enough to think about, but I'm too big to get in a sprint car. But I really like the sprint cars. But you know, you could also lose your life in a sprint car. I was there when Jason Johnson got killed.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean them guys are. What we do, we're not serious about our racing. They're serious about their racing. In sprint cars, you can learn to respect everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the wing sprints. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't. I would hop in one and try, but man, I don't know what to think about racing one of those. Those are something.
I think I would have trouble holding the throttle down wide open into the corner like them guys do. I mean, you come down the straightaway in a 410, and then you're driving it wide open into the corner, you know. So I have a lot of respect for, like, you know, a lot of them guys that I know over there. You know, Bill Baylog, and then Lance Fassbender. He's been in them, you know, and so it's, you know, them guys are serious about what they do, you know.
Yeah, I mean the way they you know cross each other over and.
Yeah, how do you know? I mean, I'm up in the stands and it gets so dusty you can't tell where anybody is. How do they know where they are at that speed, you know, when that track dries out?
Yeah, I really want to get over and watch a dirt late model show or sprint car show. I've never watched one in person. I've always wanted to, but I've watched like little micro sprints and stuff. But that was the only dirt show I ever went to.
Yeah, Cedar Lake, I went up there and that was quite a show.
I'd like to go over there.
Yeah, they got big jumbotrons and everything for the fans, and I mean that track is really cool. We went right over there at the motorhome and camped over there, and. You know, and so Scotty Theo runs over there. So
okay.
Yeah, he might be with the World of Outlaws now, him and Baylog. So I missed last year because we had a race. So what are you doing? You're not racing? Go to the races. But yeah, Beaver Dam, they're running some shows here coming up. So the dirt late models don't do nothing for me.
No,
it's got to be the sprint cars.
Got to be the sprint cars. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't think I'd ever like the sprint cars till I went. So, and I don't know. I might do dirt again. I had such trouble back at Marshfield with trying to see where I was going because I didn't have the electric thing that cleared my helmet, cleared the shield. So, when I ran there with Jerry Rudetsky, he was the guy I beat for my feature win at Marshfield. And when I ran with him, the track dried out. It was more like our asphalt, you know. So I ran like an asphalt lap behind him, you know. I didn't pitch the car or nothing then. So anyway, so yeah, I had a little bit of dirt, you know, and I like a loose race car, so it fits me good that way. I don't like a car that pushes, so
yeah.
If it pushes, I'm in big trouble. So, but yeah, mainly get it to turn, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, so I've had quite a fun career, and like I said, I wouldn't go back and change it for nothing. You know, fun part was knowing your grandpa, you know, and running with Brian and running with your dad, and you know, and then Boomer was racing back then, and Mike Miller, and yeah, quite a crew to learn from, you know.
Oh yeah.
And I did get to drive Marv's car. Doug Peschel owned that and let me drive it, and I did end up owning that car. And they've got it restored now. I think Jay Chopik has it.
Okay.
It's all restored, and they put it up at Oktoberfest on display. But that car that car flew around West Salem. So, and I told Marv, I said, boy, that thing really, really goes, you know. You run right on the grass on the bottom and have your foot right to the floor, and the thing just hooked and really went, you know.
I know you talked about running the, a lot of years running at the Dells. Do you have a favorite track?
Dells is my favorite track.
Dells is your favorite track, okay.
Yep. I like Slinger a lot, too.
Okay.
I think that I get an attitude at Slinger that I can drive into the corner deeper than everybody else, and I like Slinger. So Cole's been real successful there with Bando, and he had a clean sweep there a couple times. So, he likes that. He likes that Slinger track too.
That's the one Wisconsin track I don't have checked. Well, I shouldn't say it. Not the only one. There's Toma. I have not been to either, but yeah, Slinger. Slinger is the one that I wouldn't mind going to, and yeah, I don't have that one checked off.
You will, because the trucks are going to run there.
Well, that one's technically not on my schedule, but we'll as of now, so we'll see.
I don't know. I really like it. You're back to the working again because you race all the tracks around here and run Dells Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I didn't have an extra set of shocks and springs, so I needed to go home and rip all my stuff out and put the Slinger springs in, and then set the car up. And then I had to go to work Monday morning, and Wayne Erickson said, just come down here and run and go home, and I'll pay you during the week. You don't have to sit around and wait to get paid. You can boogie right out, So I did that for Wayne quite a few times,
Okay.
So and I worked with Dick down there during the Miller Nationals and stuff, so.
Did you ever race the Nationals?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I had a mistake made in the pits. I was right behind Kenny Schrader there when they were there, and at the halfway point, and we came in and put 2 new right side tires on and switched to lefts at that time. And I went back out and I got back in my spot behind Kenny, and I was good for like 3 laps, and I realized that something's wrong because I was turning right to go left. Ed Holmes was up in the stands. He was my radio guy. So he was in the tower, and Dick forgot to take the bleeder screw out of the right rear. So I probably had 12 inches of split. So I had to wait for a caution, and I fell back. And then we finally got a caution. I went in the pits. He took the bleeder thing out, and the thing was screaming all the way out of the pits, relieving the air in the right rear. And I started dead last, and I ended up 10th. So that was... Yeah,
probably could have been a pretty good race where you had that not happen.
Yeah, and then I tried to make it with my own car a couple times, and I didn't get in. So, yeah, one time there, Scott Wimmer and I, neither one of us got in, and the races were straight up, and him and I were in the back, so I knew we weren't going nowhere, So we didn't make the show, And some years there's a lot of cars there, and some years there's not, But I always had fun there. Yeah. So, yeah, you get on there, you'll say, oh my God, I mean, it's a lot of fun.
So what is it about the Dells that you like? Has it just fit the way you like to drive, or just because of the success?
Yeah, I don't know. I've had a lot of success there. Car always runs good there. I can get through the middle of the corner decent, It's smooth. There's no holes, It's like, State Park's bumpy, very bumpy. And, and then Plover I did good at until Baziner's changed the banking on it. And all my setups, nothing works there good anymore. I don't know why. I just can't get a handle on the track. They put the progressive banking in the corners. When they redid that, wherever I used to run, I don't run good there no more. And I've had some good runs there. I mean, I did win the Challenge Series races there, but I started right up front. And that was with that Miller car too. One was your grandpa's race.
Yeah,
the 88, I won that. And then the other one was Marv's 91 race.
Okay.
That I won. I won both them Challenge Series races there. That's, and that car was okay on the premium, four new premium tires. It was okay, So I actually was going to lose that race, but I burned a plug wire through with 5 laps to go, and I was on 7 cylinders. So Ed Holmes told me, you better get it going down the back straightaway. They're going to drive right by you, and I just took off and left everybody in the dust. So it didn't spin the tires, and we had Goodyears on back then,
Okay.
So, yeah, so I ended up winning that. That was hot and humid out. Pretty good day. I think a lot of guys got sick and pulled out. I had a couple guys challenging me, and all of a sudden they pulled off into the pits. I was like, wow, I'm still leading, you know. So I was 100 laps. So I think it was a good thing I was fat. Had lots of water in my system. I had no drink.
That's the secret, huh?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. And I did 2 of them like that, you know. So 2 back-to-back at Plover that I won. The other time the track was coming apart. So, yeah, I had Uncle Brian behind me, and I kept running through the hole and throwing rocks at him. He was getting mad at me. He was waiting for me to get a flat tire, and I never got one. So I ended up winning that one too. But I had a lot of fun. I don't know it. Like I feel now that I had a guy that was going to buy my other race car, and then he found out he had to buy tires at every track, and that stopped the sale right there. And I was lucky. There's no way I could have done what I did all these years if it wasn't for, your grandpa and Brian and Mike Miller and everybody that gave me tires. Steve Mall gave me tires, and them guys, they stayed on the good stuff all the time,
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot of cool stories of people back in those days being able to run because they had access to people's takeoffs and.
Yep. That saved me. I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason behind everything, and being thankful is one of them to your grandpa and Uncle Brian, and to your dad too. I'm a used tire hunter sometimes when I want to go somewhere. I bet even in your tires. So I've come over and got a set, the hot lap on or whatever, and it's like, well, that's the way to do it, But if I wish the tracks would all allow, and Golden Sands does now. Cody told me he does. You could come in there on used tires now. But I don't know if you got to leave them there. I wanted to be able to run there and then go down to Dells and do a show with my super late, and be able to have it like the old days when I traveled. I traveled West Salem and on Wednesday, Wausau Thursday, Madison Friday, and back then Golden Sands was Sunday, and I ran Dells on Saturday and Golden Sands Sunday night. I wanted to be in charge of what tires I put on my car. Now we see the car count going down, and the young guy that was going to buy my car said, I got all my money. This is all I got. I got to run on used tires until I learn what I'm doing. And I said, well, I don't think you can, and he had called one of the tracks and they told him, no, you got to buy 4 here and leave them here. You got to impound them, and he's like, let's forget it. So he did Chet Neitzel. I went and bought a fishing boat instead of a race car deal and he went fishing, I guess. So I lost my sale on my car. So, and I think it's important that, that you get young guys in this sport, to keep it going, So that's my opinion because that's how I did it, When you race from 1976 until 81 and never buy a tire, that's pretty good longevity on used tires.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, tires were made a little different back then too. I think probably a little more rubber in them.
Yep, not plastic. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your grandpa is the one that started us on the tall cities. That was his idea to save money, So he is a very smart man, And people probably don't realize it, but it was Steve Mall and your grandpa and Dick and them guys were sick of spending money and went to the 9-to-1 motor. That 9-to-1 went nationwide on the 2-barrel.
Yeah.
And Carl Wagner's help with that,
Right.
And that, to me, that's where we still should be. Because I see at the racetrack one night at the Dells last year, they're pointing at a guy and saying he's cheating. And I'm a big fan of the restrictor plate. I think that we should have a 9-to-1 motor only, 2-barrel, and a restrictor plate. That way, because Carl Wagner taught me a long time ago, it's only going to get so much air. And it don't matter if you have $1 million to go racing with or $1,000, them cars are going to get the same air. And actually, that's when I started winning races. When they went to the restrictor plate, the guys with money couldn't outspend me. They could maybe now on shocks and everything, but
sure.
Back then I had a chance to win, and I did a lot of it with the plate.
Yeah, I come from the, running go-karts where, those had restrictor plates and different size for different divisions. And, you'd hear some things that people, were able to get away with and do with those, especially as, just technology nowadays has evolved. So there's things people could do to those where, I don't know. It'd be tough to, I don't know what I'd think of that. Yeah.
Well, I see the truck series growing like crazy on a crate motor.
Yep.
And I see our mods. Our mods can have open motors too, but a lot of us got crate motors in the mods. And to me, it's just like it's a cheap date to run that. I think that these series all get on one engine and not have all these engines all over the place. I mean, it's really gotten out of control from, back when your grandpa and them guys made the 9-to-1 rule. So, and like I said, 9-to-1 motor with a restrictor plate on it, you could run that for 3 years. I did after Gary told me he never freshened his motor. I started getting smart and saving money. And the recap tires, even though you've been on a lot of premium tires, the caps, I ran 5 races on them, and they still look good. I got to put them in the basement and keep them warm during the winter because I'm going to run them again.
Right.
And the one year down at Dell's for CWRA, we took the motor out of my car. No, we didn't take it out. We winterized it, and we didn't have room in the shop because I had to get the semi in there, so we had to shove it outside and cover it. Well, I forgot tires were on it. So I'm like, in the spring, I'm looking in the basement, and I'm asking Cole, where's my tires? Where's my Tell Cities, He says, they're still on the car. So I was like, oh, great. So I took a grinder, and they got a little blue on them, and I ground them, and I ran them all year at the Dells. They came back. Like 18 laps, they were back. So pretty cool.
Yeah, the only thing I ever had, I've had some good runs on the recaps too, so I never minded running on, a hard brick tire that, you had to use some throttle control to get up off the corner. It was, you go from, running a track where you got a, premium tire on, then you throw those on. You're running a little different.
Yeah, you are. Yep.
And, but you'd get a tire here or there where, the thing would shake.
Yep.
Or I'll be unbalanced going down the straightaway. It was always tough for me to handle. I was like, man, I built this beautiful car, and here my steering wheel shaking going down the straightaway. So that was always kind of, that always prevented me a little bit from, wanting to do more of those races, I think. And,
yeah. Well, we wanted you to do more because your grandpa was the reason that we're on that tire. And that's the way Tom was. He could research stuff out, and, he's a smart guy, Yeah, just cool stuff. All my whole life through that little shop of yours, it's like pretty cool, So I don't know. I'll probably end my career. I don't know if I'll be doing mods or what. We'll see what happens this year, But I'll just help the boys out, And I wanted mods for all of us because it's a cheaper way for me to go racing,
Sure.
So, but we'll let Cole do the truck, and he said to me, if I don't like it at the end of the year, we'll sell it, So, but
He'll end up liking it.
Oh, he already likes it. Yeah, he's never bet on Madison. He's already looking forward to going, So
he's a Kurth. You don't really sell cars anyway, do you?
No, we'll just move it over in the yard. So, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know about where our club's headed or whatever, for CWRA. I'd like to see it stay alive. I tried talking Jeff into going with a spec motor because all these other people are just buying, they want to know that they're not being cheated for some reason, and I see a lot of that. I wish the guys wouldn't do that. I was always just told, if you're not fast enough, go home and work on your car,
Right.
So, a lot of them, but the restrictor plate would stop all the finger pointing, that this guy's doing that and he's doing that. And I'm like, I feel like an underdog if I win with a chintzy motor I bought somewhere. I did good, So it's not all about the money all the time, but if you're going to run nowadays, you better have some pocket change.
Yeah, depending on where you want to go run in the races you want to go run, that is for sure.
But I get fired up at the Dells for a Live for 5. I was like, I should have brought my super late too, but then I'd short my son because I'd be busy working on that. And then, if he needs something, I'm his radio guy. So I'm like, we'll just leave it at home and we'll find a place to run it. So Toma's a lot of fun too. You'll like it over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that drag like?
Long straightaway and real tight corners.
How big is it? Like a third mile?
Like a third mile, yeah. Between a quarter mile and a third mile.
Okay.
So we had a CWRA show over there. I think we got some this year too over there. And I'll take the 4-cylinder over there and run over there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's one of the other, like I said, one of the other tracks that I haven't been over to. Is there anything in your racing career you wish you would have done differently, or hey, I wish I would have, bought this other car, or I wish I would have, ran here, or anything like that?
Not really. I kind of got a set deal going, with what I got. If something comes along, I'll buy it if the price is right, So, yeah, I don't know. I wish I would have, maybe ran a little more at NASCAR touring I did for Ed Holmes. I drove the 20 car, Ed Holmes' house car, and I had a lot of fun doing that stuff. We ran a big race, 300 laps at Kaukauna, and then Andrew Morrissey and I kind of shared that car back and forth. Whoever came with money, and I didn't have sponsor money, so Ed let Andrew run it, and so Morrissey ran it too. So we both had Ed Holmes' 20 car.
Okay.
So I did. I think I did pretty good with that thing. Not close to winning the feature. I had Steve Carlson and all them guys. I ran good at Elko with it.
Okay.
So, and West Salem.
Now, was that late 90s, early 2000s?
I don't remember when that was. Tim Schendel was running with us.
Okay.
So we had to have the car number 20 because Tim was 21.
Okay.
And that's Ed's car number, 21, Ed Holmes.
Yep.
So, we had Bruce at B&B did our motor and, and stuff for that car. And it was a full perimeter. It was fast. I shook it down at the Dells and won the second heat with it, shaking it down. And I was supposed to just go right around behind everybody, but that car flew. It was a good car. So, yeah, I ran that too. And I kind of wanted to get it more into NASCAR, like into the trucks or something like that, I look at the ARCA thing and think that I could have been successful with that. And Uncle Brian did some of that too, but he ends up getting taken out by somebody else, when he could have won the race, and somebody takes you out. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too. Yeah, kind of growing up, running around, racing with a lot of the people that you had, did you have obviously yes, but yeah, I was going to ask that, did you have a desire at some point, hey, I want to try and, make it to NASCAR land?
Yeah, I tried. Yeah, I tried, but I come up short, a couple times. Brian Severson, when he was running the Dells, had a guy there that had an ARCA car, and I was actually going to go to Bristol.
Okay.
Then we had a guy for a sponsor, and that fell through. So there went our operating money to rent the car. But I was going to get a shot at Bristol, which would have been really cool.
Yeah.
So, and I was winning more back in them days. I really don't know when I won my last race. I can't remember. So I'm going to have to win one this year.
There you go.
I can remember what the date is. But, yeah, it's been a while since I won a feature. And I wasn't really racing super hard. I kind of backed out, and didn't do a lot of stuff. So mainly just ran CWRA and picked up a special here and there, So I don't know. Any
tracks that you wish you could have gotten to, with a super late model that you never ventured off to?
Yeah, Anderson.
Okay.
Yep. I go by their trucking all the time, and I look at the track, and I'm like, man, I need to come down here and run this. So still could probably.
Still could.
Yeah, it's not over with yet. Yeah, it's Anderson. I looked really good in Indiana. I really like that track. I've never been on it, but that's a little track,
Yeah, I think my uncle won an ASA race there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go by it because I used to pick up, down the road, I'd be coming right by the racetrack and sit there and look at that and thinking, yeah, should go to Anderson, So I met a lot of people when I went to Florida, down there.
Yeah.
Ray Skillman, he's right there in Indiana too, So I knew all them guys. I was by them at New Smyrna, so we drank a lot of beer together and talked and raced together down there, So his son Drew was running drag cars here, so, but I don't see him no more. I don't know what happened to it, if they sold it or what. So, but he was running pretty good in pro stock. But I don't know. Maybe I'll go drag racing. Maybe I'll sell all the stuff and go drag racing. I don't know.
Hey, Tony Stewart's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my neighbor Randy O'Keefe, he runs drag cars, and his stepson does, and they got the girls in the junior dragsters, and it looks like fun too. I always thought I could do that pretty good too. So
sprint cars you'd like to try, dragsters you'd like to try, anything else?
ARCA, yeah. Get an ARCA ride. Better find some money. With 2 kids racing, I'm pretty strapped right now. So, but I mean, I put everything together cheap. So, it's like, well, what do you do? So.
Yeah. Now kind of going back to, like I said, I go back to it too, because I think it's such a cool time that, you grew up starting to race. I mean, I love the era that I grew up starting to race in, because I think about, I started racing super late models when guys like Steve Holzhausen were getting out of it, Tim Sauter was getting out of it, and I'm like, man, I got to race with some really cool guys. And
yep.
I think that I look back at that, and I never got to run with Joe Kurkowski. Quit before I ever got to run with him, but I got to pit next to him at Golden Sands, and
God.
that was an absolute blast, running or parking next to him, and that was so cool. And it's one of the things I look back and I'm like, man, I was 12 years old, parked next to Joe Kurkowski at Golden Sands. Like, man, that was awesome. But yeah, I mean, do you look back at those times and think like, yeah, man, I really grew up in just a great time and knew some amazing people.
That's, and I'm on Facebook too much, of course, but I'm always posting pictures, of your grandpa.
Trickle Tuesday. Thank you for those. Yeah.
Yep. Trickle Tuesday and Marv Monday. I don't always get Marv on Monday, but they got Mike Miller Monday too. So, I think about that all the time. I grew up in a great era. I don't know. Sometimes somebody mouths off to me at the Dells or something, don't like something I did, and I'm like, well, you're just lucky that you didn't have to race against Reffner and Deachens and all them guys, because you'd be in big trouble. There's no way you'd beat them guys. Not back in their day. They were elite group all on their own. And they're all fast. I think just hanging around them and knowing them, is what helped me a bunch. If I couldn't get an answer out of one, I'd get it out of the other.
Yeah, one wouldn't give you their memeasurements off the car, so you went to the next guy.
Yeah. And then I said to Dick, I hope Tom's not mad at me. I said, he's not going to let me, check his car, and Dick just laughed, he's like, well, you can check mine and go home and see where you're off, and I was way off, patting our bar down too low on the right. And, it's just crazy stuff, and they're all helpful to me, and I really appreciate that, So if it wasn't for me running the javelin, I'd never be racing. Good thing I went out there and tried to make some hot laps.
Yeah, right. And is there anything like, I know you stayed close to, obviously, my grandpa, Tom Reffner over the years, and I know you stayed close to Dick and all those guys. Is there anything, a particular thing that any of those guys ever told you when you're back racing that just like really resonated with you, that's just always stuck with you your whole life? There's probably a lot of them, but I was just curious if there was ever one thing that one of them guys ever said, because I think I know Dick was known for saying a lot of special things to people, and
yeah, like an hour's sleep for every 100 laps.
Yeah.
Did
you ever try that one out?
No, I probably did, but I probably didn't realize I was doing it. Yeah. No, not really. I mean, they just all kind of helped me along the way. Your Uncle Brian and I learned not to go out the box car chassis at 1 p.m. for parts, because Jimbo made us have a few beers with him before.
He drank when he worked on cars, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh. And then one time Brian was out there, and I came behind him, and I had to pick up some parts, and Jimbo took took Uncle Brian's keys and took my keys, and we had to help him drink a 12-pack before he would give us our keys back. So we got smart and made extra keys in our wallet when we went out there in case that happened again. It didn't happen all the time, but Jimbo was quite the character.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of awesome Jim Box stories I've heard,
God.
for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I was too young, and I won a case of beer for winning the semi-feature at Golden Sands from the Sherryland Ballroom, and my dad had to go out there with me to get my case of beer, and we heard something banging coming through, and we looked, and it was Jimbo, and it was already Friday morning, so it was like a week later. We're out there getting my beer, and they were just coming home from State Park. So my dad says, "Drink your pop, let's go see what Baki's up to." So we follow him down to catch up to him going into the shop, and Cirilla came out and said, "I told you to be home before 12. And Jim looked at his watch, and he goes, "It's 5:02. And she said, "I meant last night, not 12 today." And they were out in the bar having a good time, and Jimbo, he's like, "Well, yeah," he goes, it's 5 to 12. I'm home before 12, you know. He is quite the character. Yeah. So, yeah, he sponsored by Whole Chunk. They used to come flying around us on the way to the Dells with the van. So, anyway, I think Brian was picking on him because when he opened up the door on the bingo van, it said free spot. But when you open up the door, it said free pot. Because you opened the door up and the lettering was gone. So Uncle Brian says, "Hey, Jimbo, you giving away free pot, And I'm like, oh, my God, Yeah.
Yeah, what a letter will do.
Yeah, what a letter will do, yeah. So John Becker must have lined that one up wrong. Either that or he did it on purpose, so. But, yeah, in my career, I just kind of learned from all them guys, So got a good deer story on with your grandpa's hauler. Told this one a lot to a lot of people, and everybody laughed.
I don't think I've heard this one.
Baki and your grandpa were at Cromie's, and the bar closed, and they went and got.
Where was Cromie's? I've heard
still in West Salem. It's still there.
Okay.
So they went to Cromie's and they closed the bar down. I had my driver's license, and I don't think Brian had his license yet. And we closed the bar down. We could not get Jim and your grandpa to leave. They were going to sit out in the parking lot out there and drink beer until the beer was gone. So anyhow, finally we get to go home. Well, Brian was getting hungry, so we took the hauler. So I told him, "I'm going to leave you guys here. We're going home, You ain't going home, And took the hauler and went down to Weir's Oasis. And we thought Weir's was open all night for something to eat. And Brian was starving. And I was probably hungry too. So we get down there, it's closed. So there was no quick trips or nothing back then. So we're coming with the old hauler back up the interstate, get back on the interstate, going back to get Grandpa Tom. And all of a sudden the hauler runs out of gas. And I'm like, and Grandpa's got the seat tank on the hauler and 2 extra tanks. He's got a valve on the bottom on that old blue truck. Nothing's marked. I don't know where the other tanks are. I'm turning the valve and trying to get it to run, and Brian and I are down to about 30 miles an hour on the interstate. All of a sudden it takes off. I must have turned the valve to the right tank, and it primed itself up. So anyway, we get back, finally get them guys to go home. Grandpa Tom's not going to let me drive. You ride over there, and then Brian was in the middle. So wake up. I fell asleep, and then we wake up on the side of Highway 21. The truck is shaking. And we're almost in the marsh, and Tom's sound asleep. So I reach over and hit him, and I said, "Are you going to let me drive?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "One good thing about me, Kirby, is when I fall asleep, my foot comes off the gas." That's what he told me. And he crawls back in the sleeper. So I get in the truck, and I get it going down 21, and we turn left on 173, get down there, and just get across the railroad tracks. And a big buck runs out, and I hit the deer, just wrecked the truck. Left front fender, and Grandpa just put brand new Sears steer tires on that thing. So I told Brian, I said, and then he wakes up in the sleeper and he said, Kirby, just keep going. The headlight's still on, keep going. And I'm like, I told Brian I don't want that bumper to rub into that tire and wreck that new tire. So we got the jack handle out, pulled over on 173 and pulled the bumper away from the tire.
Yeah.
It was definitely rubbing on it. So I felt bad. I'm talking to Brian all the way down 173. I'm saying, I didn't want to do that to the truck, And, the Blue Knight truck and got the front end all bashed in on it and got to go race the next night at Wausau, And I'm going down through Mather and all that, and all of a sudden your grandpa wakes up, and I was still humming about hitting the deer, and he says, Kirby, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the truck. It's fine. He goes, that deer you hit and killed was a good thing you hit and killed him. I said, why? He said, because he'll just have stupid kids. He'll reproduce, have stupid kids that stand in the road. So good thing you killed him, he said.
Yeah, those dang deer standing in the road.
And deer standing in the road or running across, whatever. And so that's how that hauler got. Doug Neiman brought over a big wrecker bumper, and we welded that back on and fixed it all up the next day there. So, yeah, a lot of good times there.
Yeah, sure sounds like it.
Yeah, Pete Hofferman there. Pete would lose his temper every once in a while. So, a lot of pressure on him, He did a great job for your grandpa. And to think of that, he was the crew chief for Dick's 67 feature wins, and he was the crew chief for your grandpa's 67 feature wins.
Okay.
Pete was.
I didn't realize that it was when he was with Dick. I knew he was with my grandpa for the 67, but I didn't realize he was with Dick for his. So, okay.
Yep. So,
and then he went down to have a pretty successful career at Hendrick.
Yeah. Yep. I saw Pete one time. Since he's been gone, he was at the hockey rink in Rapids. He said hi to me, and I was like, oh, my God, Pete's here,
Yeah.
So, I got to say hi to him. So, and it wasn't for him selling me that car, the Cyclone, I would have never had a race car, and it was kind of like Dick's and your grandpa's idea for me to build my own car after what I did to him,
Yeah.
So, you met a lot of people and met Banjo Matthews down at Daytona with Dick down there, and met a lot of people down there. So, and, Dick's unique in his own way. He's kind of like me, going to get something for free. So I tried walking into the scale at Daytona, and they told me I'm not allowed in there. And then Dick was standing in the window, and he's like, come on, come in. So then we went from there over to the kitchen, and he took the spatula out of the lady's hand that was cooking for all the people at the track, and he's checking the burgers, and that's where Banjo Matthews was sitting next to the refrigerator, and he says, Kirby, you want a cheeseburger? And I said, yeah. And then the lady said, it's not for you, Trickle. This food ain't for you. It's for our staff, And Dick's like, well, put another burger on. Not out of burgers, are you? And he opened up the refrigerator and got her a pack of burgers out. Then he got milk for his coffee and introduced me to Banjo Matthews. And then him and I went to the garage. I had no garage pass. Father Gruba probably can remember that, because Father Gruba found me in the garage and said, how did you get in here without a gold card? I said, I come in with Dick, And then Dick come over to me and told me, you're in the garage. You can talk to whoever you want, but they're eventually going to find that you don't have a pass and boot you out. And he said, just tell them you pushed the car in when they opened the gates. That's how you got in here, because Dick said, you'll get me in trouble.
He wasn't going to let you throw him under the bus. So.
No, not at all. So, I got so then another famous deal he did for me. I wanted to talk to Jeff Gordon, and I didn't know how to get a hold of Jeff Gordon. And it was kind of like the time when nobody really liked Jeff Gordon,
Okay.
And I told Dick, he says, anybody else you want to meet while you're down here? I said, yeah, Jeff Gordon. And we looked around, and he's like, Jeff Gordon's not down here. He goes, well, he took a stool, or not a stool, like a folding chair, and said, come with me. And I went out, he takes me back out by the parking lot, but it's in the pit area, in the paddock there. And he says, opens the chair up and tells me to sit down there. And I said, why? He goes, well, eventually everybody's going to come to use the bathroom, so then you can talk to whoever you want to. That's where he sat me.
Did you sit down?
I sat down. Yeah, I sat there for quite a while, but never got to meet Jeff. So everybody else, like Rusty Wallace came through. Yeah. So I don't know. It was just, That's Trickle, you know.
Yeah.
I think Kenny Wallace might have spotted me and said, "What are you doing sitting out here?" I said, "Well, I got to meet people. You know, the drivers are coming in and out of here. You know,
Who's this weirdo?
Yeah. But you know, he knew how to get the job done. Dick did, you know. So yeah,
the part about it.
just goofy stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Stuff
fantastic.
you go through, you know. So I had a guy run all the way across the New York Thruway through the mud. He recognized me. I'm going east with my semi, and he recognized me from the other side of the road. He was all wet, and his shoes were soaked, and he come over to shake my hand, and I didn't know who he was. Said he met me at Daytona with Trickle. I'm like, how the hell do you know who I am? You know, I mean, the New York State Thruway, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, he would just wrecked his shoes, wrecked his pants, but I was like, wow, I wouldn't have run that far to meet anybody. That was pretty cool too. Just kind of a off the wall weird thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. So we'll see what the future is. We're maybe when I get to year 50, I'm gonna have to quit. I don't know. So we'll see how
I'll probably
summer
buy
goes.
something else.
Yeah, never know. Never know. So
You know, what is it like, you know, having been racing as long as you have, what's it like seeing where racing has, have you raced anything that had, you know, the bump stops and the bump springs and all that?
Yeah.
Okay. What's it like, you know, from what you built in my grandpa's shop to seeing cars with that, you know, what is it like seeing that progression?
see, I'm not right now. That was before Dick passed away. I went to him because I was struggling on that. And when he was down in the Iron Station, I had him go check around with some teams that were running bump stops and all that. And he said he would do that for me. And he called me up and he said, no, everybody's all over the place. And he says, go back to our old setups and run conventional coil, because if the car's loose, you know what to do to tighten it up. And he said, if I was 10 years younger, I could beat every one of these guys on them suck down springs, he said, and shocks. And I said, really? And he goes, yep. Because he just thinks that the car's bottomed out and the cross member's dragging on the track. You're not going nowhere. That's what he told me. So he had me get rid of all my stuff, all my tie down stuff I sold. And I went back to my old spring setups that I run. And I'm not really that far off, really.
Yeah, it's you can definitely be fast with, you know, a lot of, you know, the new stuff, but doesn't take much to be off. It's gotta be right. That's for sure.
You got to make the right changes. That's what I found out. You know, Ed's probably better at it now. When we first went to that with our new Miller car, the car I got went in the back garage, and we built a brand new car with Ed Holmes, and I could go out and set fast time with that. But by about the fourth lap in the feature, I'm headed to the back. We couldn't keep the car under us, you know. And I don't know what was changing on it, you know. And he worked with it for like a month. You know, we tried to get it better. We were getting it a little bit better. And then one day I came down there to scale the car, and all the shocks were laying in the corner, and the sway bar was in the corner, and it was back to the old way, the way we always raced L's. Okay. So Dick took it all. Dick Brescia took it all apart and just threw it, and said he had enough of it. So that's actually the car Gary Kovaleski bought. Okay. Yeah. So that was the car. We took all that, you know, stuff off there. Yeah, I'm sure the car runs better lower to the ground. You know, and I tried to do that with my car, with my old one, and it, you know, it moves the roll center, pushes the roll center too far, and it don't work right. Yeah. And Dick told me if it wasn't built on the ground, it's not going to run on the ground. Yeah. So you need to cut all that suspension off and redo it all. And I'm like, oh, great, you know. And he's like, why don't you just go back to what you know? That was his advice to me, you know, 10 years ago or whatever, you know, go back to what you know, and I'm still there. So, and the mods are easier too. They're on, you know, Chevelle frame and that, you know.
Sure,
and
yeah.
So, and the bottom line with racing is, I think, is just wherever you can have the most fun. That's why I bought the 4-cylinder car, because I still think you can go out and have a blast with that and get the same rush that you would spending $100,000 on a super late, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't pay to do it if you're not having any fun.
No. And I said that to my boys. I said, if you guys ain't having fun, then we shouldn't be doing this no more, you know. Yeah. So, but I don't know what else I'm going to do to have fun. So, been around too long, And like Steve Holtzhausen, I don't know how he can walk away like he did. I'd be going crazy, But I seen Steve at the Dells last weekend. He was still there. So,
Okay.
Tim Schendel, he was talking about it the other day too. And I'm like, I bet them guys miss driving, So it's good to know I still got one of something in the garage. If I need to take it, I can go run it,
Yeah.
So I'm going to miss State Park Speedway. That was one of my favorite tracks too. I got around that place good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that place is never. I've qualified okay there at times, and I've had a couple good runs, but that was never my sweet spot.
Oh God, I love that place. Yeah.
And do you think you got around good there because? Well, I mean, obviously, in earlier times it had more grip than what it had in the last several years. But do you think why do you think you got around good there? Why did you like it?
I don't know. I could run right tight to the bottom wall. They had when Phil had it going there, he had the bottom wall, the Jersey wall there. And Greg Bach used to sit down in the corner in 3 and 4. I could almost reach out and slap him on my way by. I'd be so close to the wall. And my car just worked good there. It worked really good,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just always enjoyed it. I don't know what it was, So
did you ever have a preference, like, smaller tracks versus bigger tracks in general, or not really?
No, not really. I mean, ran good at West Salem, when I ran over there. I thought running at West Salem made me more invincible at the smaller tracks, for carrying speed and all that, Did a lot of times we get caught up, in traffic and stuff at State Park, you got to wait for it to clear out, know. So, yeah, I had to move somebody there one night and then Uncle Brian said to me, how long were you going to sit there before you did something about that, because he was behind me.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we're caught in traffic, and I finally wiggled the guy out of the way or whatever and got through, and him and I got out, But, yeah, it's like, it was just fun up there for a little quarter mile, So I even raced Tomahawk when it was asphalt.
Okay.
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's too bad. I don't want to see these tracks, go, But regulations are killing the racetracks too, If you would buy it, you got to get it all up to par, So, the concession stands and everything, all the rules and regulations, So I hope it don't kill it all the way around, I'd like to support everybody if I can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's it's a tough day and age to have a racetrack and definitely want to see him keep going and grow and be stronger, and it seems like we're a lot of tracks are making money is on the the eve of destructions and things like that too, and hey, they got to do what they got to do to make money and
Survive,
money and stay afloat.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. If I had my own way and I was going to run my own track, I would do it the cheap way. I would do the CWRA deal, but I would have a spec motor, and you got to buy my spec motor if you're going to run with us, and then that way everybody's got all winter to get on the same engine, and the recaps slow the cars down. They're not as fast as premium Hoosiers, but we have more passing and put on a better show because we can move around and pass, where the Hoosier tires, nothing against them, but usually once the guy is in the lead, that you're going to stay there all night unless somebody roots you out of the way, but and you end up with a one lane, one follow the leader, and I watched that and I listened to people in the stands and I'm like, it's like, wow, then the race fans are starting to figure it out too, So
yeah, I don't know if it was something he ever said to you, but I when Trickle was still around, I had asked him, what do you think it would take to? I've always been interested in people, especially a guy like that. What do you think it would take to, what does racing need? What does racing need? And I think and he had kind of said like, I don't think it'll ever get better until it dies.
Until it dies, yeah.
And I said, what do you mean by that? And he's like, we're our own worst enemy. And I always kind of thought about that, and I was like, well, I hope it never comes to that. And I think there's probably some truth in that. But yeah, hopefully it never comes to that. And I think there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things to keep things moving. So especially over the last several years, I think there's been a lot of things going and growing for racing at, at various levels. So, yeah, hopefully he's wrong about that, but we'll, and I think, that you talk about, whether it's recap tires or, a spec motor and I'm not a fan of there being, a bunch of different motor combinations, because that was always something that was tough for me was, and you've seen a lot of people talk about it. It's like, well, and I got to have, 2 cars to compete. Well, I was never going to build 2 cars. And so it's like, yeah, at times, depending on what the weight limit was or the weight rule was, crate motor's good, the thing to have at this track. And,
Yep.
Maybe a 6.0 or an Ace motor is the thing to have at this track. And that always really bothered me. And, when I got the LS motor and I had the ability to go from a 4-barrel to a 2-barrel, and I put that 2-barrel on at Plover, I'm like, oh my God, I see why I've been getting beat, at years when I just got demolished by a crate motor. I'm like, I understand now, because, this is easy to drive. And,
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that too, that's, and I don't always know if it's one thing, and I don't think it's one thing that would, make an improvement. I think it's a whole package deal. And I think that's why, we've talked about them a couple of times already, and I've talked about them in other episodes, the Midwest Truck Series. And I think it's kind of the whole package that they got going on that makes it work, and why it's, attracting people. And it's not just the tires, it's the tires, the length of races, and, all the other things that are going on. And there's other, you see like the Cars Tour down south, that's doing really well. Yeah, so there's a lot of, I think it's a whole package thing when I kind of really look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the fact, because I seen too many guys pointing fingers, and the race fans are down there. They should be down there enjoying themselves, getting autographs, and you got guys fighting in the pits, and it's turned into that. The other team don't have enough money to keep up with the other team, and they're trying to do something way over their head. And I'm like, I don't want to be involved in that no more. Back when we ran CWRA and we had the restrictor plate, Royce would come around and check the plate after you want it to feature, and take it out of the car or whatever, or do it at the scale. And by the time the people came down and the spectator races were over or whatever, we had that thing all put back together, and we were on the back having a beer, signing autographs for our fans. And the people would just crowd the pit area and walk around and have a really good time. And when you get down the other tracks and somebody's accusing the other guy of cheating, and I'm like, oh, come on, don't sit and fight in front of the fans. I didn't like that. That's why I wanted to, I talked to Jeff Weinfurter a couple times that we should, come up with a spec motor. And I don't care what it is, because I got everything. So come up with a spec motor for CWRA. If you want a 9-to-1, go back to 9-to-1. If you want a crate motor, let's do that. And then I'll get more people coming into our sport, because they can say, hey, I can take my 604 and come and run with you guys now, it'll help improve the car count. Unfortunately, we've got all the engines listed in CWRA at different weights, and Steve and them guys have done a great job with that, So if you got a certain motor, you got to weigh a certain thing, and I don't know. I just always like the series, It's cheap for me, because I can buy a set of tires and run all year on them if I don't cut one, So
yeah, I mean, I know when I had a year when I ran a handful of them, and I would really just pick and choose the tracks that I'd want to go to, and the events I wanted to go to, and I mean, it was cool. It was like, I'll probably go run that CWA race over at Marshfield, and it's like, all right, grab those CWA tires. They got a little dust on them in the corner, and throw them on. I ran them the last 2 shows I had them at, and away we go.
Yeah, I mean, if a guy loves auto racing and you got to cut corners, that's one option, for to come and run with our group. I've run a lot of premium tire races in my lifetime, and I love them.
Yep.
So I always told Mike Hobble, I know when the car's fast, because the saliva would run out of my mouth around the corner. That thing would stick so much, and they would get a kick out of me saying that, I did some unique stuff with him. I started in, I think we had second fast or third fast time or something at Plover, and I started in the back of the feature, and I passed like 3 cars, and the car was bad. And I don't know with your career if you ever did this, but it's never happened to me. Mike yells on the radio, we get a caution, bring it in. And I'm like, what do you mean bring it in? My mom and dad were in the stands, and everybody's in the stands. I pull off into the pits, and he yells 223 on them trailing arms, you guys. And they actually changed the whole back of the car during the feature while the caution was out. And I didn't come in right away when Mike told me to come in. I made another lap. And he says, when I tell you to come in, come in. So I got in there, but they got it, how to do that when it's that hot back there. Had Jerry Roth and Dewey, who passed away. Dewey was on our crew. And how them guys did that quick is unreal. I've never, ever had that happen, because usually if I got a bad car for the feature, I got it for the whole night, But, and I ended up coming out while they were going green, and I luckily got another caution, and then did a double file restart, and I ended up winning that feature. And,
no kidding.
Yeah, from the back. We already had 5 or 7 laps in, But I've never, ever had anybody adjust my trailing arms and stuff on a caution. Never. My whole career. I still remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah, no, I never pulled in at like the beginning of a race or middle of a race and, made an adjustment like that and came back out. Probably should have at least tried something, but no, never did that myself.
Yeah, I mean, they were going green when I pulled up on the slab, pointed out, and they got that thing up in the air, and they changed all that. I mean, that upper arm in the middle, as old as I am now, would probably take me a week to change it, And they did it in record time. I mean, and plus tightened everything up and then got the car back down. I'm like, how can you crawl in there? The exhaust is right there, and the rear end's hot. And, I mean, them bars had to be hot. I give them guys a lot of credit, and I give Mike a lot of credit for that. Mike and Donna, I drove for them, with that car, and I think Monty Gress has that car now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's one of the 107 cars. So,
okay.
Yeah, I was really at home in that car. Yeah, 107.5. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I run with a lot of people. I mean, I run with Gary Porter when he was alive, and then Brad. Talking about Gress is Brad Gress. He used to come to Mike Miller's shop all the time.
Okay.
He was number 77. It's like Joe Krakowski. So, yeah, I got to run with all them guys, and sometimes it kind of breaks my heart. I pulled a picture out here a while back because I don't have all my pictures in a book. I got them in 2 briefcases, and here was...
well, maybe if you ever stop racing, you can start scrapbooking.
Yeah, I could do that. That would take me a lifetime to do that. Here's Gary Porter and Brad Gress and me at Golden Sands, And I'm thinking, wow, I'm the only guy alive out of this photo, It kind of freaks you out every once in a while when you look at that, So... yeah, so there's my career in a nutshell, I guess. Started a big hauler.
Started the big hauler trend.
Yep, did that because I was sick of everybody, sick with everybody.
Wanted to show off all you wanted to show off all your money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People did think that I had money back then because of that equipment, but I was just smart enough to do it the cheap way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if you're a semi-truck driver and some of that stuff's out there cheap and you can pick it up, why not?
Yeah, I went over to Vidoc in Linden Station, and I had a guy yell at me on the CB, where are you going, And I told him I had to tell him how to get into the track, and he's like, I'm coming there. I'm going to come down by you. And he actually ended up pitting for us. He was on his way to Chicago, and it was early in the afternoon, and he seen me go over to Vidoc and yelled on the CB right away,
Yeah, I always, people are always talking about, open trailers and like, oh yeah, that's when things started going downhill is when people didn't have open trailers. But I don't know if there's one thing I always think is so cool is watching a big race hauler go down the road that's lettered up. And I don't know, it's cool seeing a race car in a trailer, but I know it's pretty badass seeing a semi pulling a trailer and race hauler all lettered up. That's pretty cool. I mean, some of those dirt guys, they got some pretty sweet rigs.
They do.
And I always, Bloomquist, he always had that all black toter home with the trailer. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
yeah. If that doesn't grab your attention going down the road, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I ran into John Force one year down in Ohio. I couldn't believe all the rigs they had. They got like 6 of them between him and Brittany. The one race car trailer is a restaurant. So I was talking to the guy while he's getting fuel. He goes, "Well, I don't have nothing to do with the drag racing." I go, "Really?" And I go, "What do you do?" "I cook." He took me in the trailer and showed me. It's all like booths in there. And
did they just bring the whole rig down there just to cook for all the teams and everything?
No, just for John Force. They had the whole thing set up. He took me in there, everything stainless steel, and they had booths, tables to sit at. And and that's all he does when he gets to the track is he starts preparing food for everybody, breakfast and lunch and dinner. And I'm like, wow,
that's
really?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got his own own truck to pull it with. Forces.
Yeah.
It was all Castrol. There was like 6 of them, I do believe. 3 of John's, and then Brittany's, and then the other one, the lunch truck.
Okay.
They all look the same. So that's really something.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. No, I never heard of that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I wanted to run down at Nashville. I never did that either. Went down there a couple times.
That track.
Yeah. At the fairgrounds down there. I went down there one year and just went down and watched, So I think, I don't know, Kevin Swinski might have been racing back then because I sat with Joe from Country Joe Holmes up there. We sat in the stands up there together and yacked with him up there. So I think Kevin might have been running there, or else somebody else was running one of their cars. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's quite the place too.
Did you ever run an ASA car at all?
Yeah, but it was more like our short track cars, not. We had a roll cage with Eddie Holmes, and we were just going to build one, and then Ed got word that ASA was closing up.
Okay.
So we ended up selling the motor, and he sold the car to somebody.
Okay.
He got rid of it, so he didn't. I know Uncle Brian lost quite a bit of money on that whole deal too, I think.
Yeah, that was a sad race series to see go.
Yeah,
that was. I was pretty young when he had that race team. I mean, I think I was from, I don't know, like 9 to 11 or 10 to 12 years old, somewhere around there. And I remember having my first 4-cylinder. We started tinkering with it in his shop, and actually that's where, outside of his shop, that's where I was 11 years old, and I started learning how to drive a stick shift out in the parking lot in front of it. So yeah, I'd have to drive in one stall, and then I don't know, I'd have to use reverse and go back up into a different stall, and yeah. But yeah, I know that ASA series, especially around that early 2000s, was cool. I mean, that was, yeah, for me, I would go race a go-kart race on a Saturday night, and then we were always, wherever we were racing at that time, I don't know if it was Monster World Speedway or wherever, but we were always able to get home, and then I'd get to stay up late because Uncle Brian would be running at Talladega or something, and or Atlanta or wherever, and I get to tune in to, I don't know if it's TNN or whatever, and Speed Channel.
I don't have enough experience, even right now, to know how to even get into these NASCAR races. So even if I did have a car, I'd have to have a lot of help, sending everything in or whatever. And Uncle Brian did good in the trucks, and I was a big fan, and watching him, it was fun to watch him, So, yeah, I don't know. He talked to him the other day too. I don't know if he misses racing or not, but probably don't miss the expense of it,
Yeah, I know. He had always said, "Mrs. Driving doesn't miss all the work."
Yeah, a lot of work, a lot more than people know.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yeah, dependent. If you're just a casual fan, I don't know if people always realize how much work goes into it all.
Yeah, I took a couple guys with me from the paper mill over in Port Edwards, and they were like, "I'm not doing this no more." And I'm like, "Well, this is easy. We're on a recap tire. You don't even have to mess with the tires, I don't care." He said, "The changing gears and doing all that's crazy." I had them both dirty by the end of the night, and they were like, "I ain't doing this no more," So I guess they realized that they didn't know there was that much work involved in it,
Yeah.
So everybody's got their own routine, Sometimes I like hearing stories about, I don't remember if it was Tucker Miller's wife or girlfriend or something, telling me at State Park Speedway that Monday, there was 5 guys on the nose of the car bouncing it down and putting shims in the shocks. And I don't remember if it was her or not, but I'm pretty sure it was Tucker's girlfriend or wife. I'm not sure. But then she goes, guess what they did Tuesday? I go, what? They bounced on the car all night until 9 o'clock. And I said, oh, yeah? And she goes, guess what they did Wednesday? I go, bounced on the car? Bounced on the car, she said. And I got a big kick out of that. And then she goes, all that to come here and run 30 laps on Thursday, she said. They were out there all week working on shocks. That was kind of cute.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing it's amazing what people do what we'll do to go run on a Thursday or Friday or Saturday night.
Well, I backed Marv's old car into the wall at West Salem, and when it sat on the open trailer, the frame rail sat on the catwalk, and the rear end was in the air. And I was hurting because I hit backwards and knocked the wind out of me. But I went home to Nakusa and unloaded the car, and just like a wild man, cut the rear clip right off of it. The trailing arms and the rear end, everything was okay. It just buckled where the frame went underneath. It buckled it, and I had to put new metal back there. And State Park was the next night, so I called in sick to work at Ruan and had Bobby T cover my shift for me. And I just clunked up a straight piece of metal and welded it right back in by the battery box, and I notched it with the torch, and I pushed it back up and welded it all back up and painted it and put the fuel cell back in. And I said, all it does is hold the gas tank up in the back. And my wife was not impressed with me out there all night. I went to Wausau the next night with it. Looked just perfect.
How'd you find yourself in Marv's car?
Doug Peschel is Marv's brother-in-law.
Okay.
And Doug had bought the car and was going to try racing it. It was yellow number 44.
Okay.
And then when Doug realized how much money you got to put in tires and all that, he had some stones on there. So I went and got some used tires from some guys at Dell's, and I drove it in the semi-feature at the Dell's, and I ended up second with it. And Doug's like, why don't you just buy this thing from me? I don't want to go through this, And he didn't realize that. He thought you could put tires on it and just run it.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up with the car.
Okay.
I one of Boomer's motors in there, and we ran that a whole year. And I ended up buying it from him. So, and then I think Mark Hesswein got the trailer, and then there was one extra motor that I could have bought with it too. So I think I paid $3,500 for the car. He gave me a good deal on it,
Okay.
And I ended up my very first Oktoberfest trophy I ever got, I got with that car.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a B feature, but I blew everybody away with it. So that thing flew there. So that's how I ended up with that.
Okay.
I think I did end up selling that car to Mark, too. I think Mark had it for a while, and then Chopix got it back. I'm not sure if Renee Shanahan got that car or not, but somehow Chopix got it back and put it back to yellow 91, the way it was.
Cool.
So, but that's a fast car. If them guys ran that in the vintage races, they'd be winning all the time with that thing, especially at lacrosse.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Then I own Dick's last car he drove, so I've got that in my keepsake collection. I don't know if that was a smart move or not when I need money to fund my kids, but I bought that quite a while ago from Kevin.
Yeah, that's a cool car to have.
Yeah, it is. It's his last car he raced. So, to have that, and that means a lot to me because I think I wanted your grandpa's car too, but John Elf, I think I'm going to have to wrestle him out in front of your mom's shed for it. So I said, gee, that'd be cool to have Tom's car and Dick's last car,
Yeah, I don't know. Still there.
Yeah, it's still there,
Still there.
But, yeah, it'd be cool. I would, myself, if I got to quit racing, I'd like to find a building, find some financing somewhere, and open up a museum like they have in Hartford and put all, like, my trophies and stuff all on display there. Anybody that wanted to be in there, put your pictures up and all that. And then, have events there,
Yeah.
Like the Dick Trickle Memorial has, and just put that car on display in there so, anybody that wanted to be in there that still has cars around or trophies, and stuff.
A lot of history around here, that's for sure.
There is, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
If it's,
That'd be cool.
if you're putting doors up or whatever, but something for the people to come in and look at,
Yeah, no, I think, it's kind of the same thing with, with this whole deal. I think there's so many great people that have great stories, and there's such a rich history of racing around here. I think, yeah, you don't want it to go away, and yeah, there's kids that are kids that are only 10 years old that um don't remember or don't know of certain people, and I always think it's really neat when you're at a racetrack, and you end up meeting some 7-8 year old kid, and the guy, because either his dad or his grandpa talked to him, he knows who Dick Trickle is and stuff like that. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm glad people are still talking about him, and I think they rightfully forever will be. But I think that'd be cool to see something like that. That'd be cool to see something like that.
That was like a goal of mine, because the one in Hartford, if nobody's gone to it, they need to go there. There's a lot of cool history in that. A lot of
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, they've got an auditorium in there, and then they inducted your grandpa in there. So
Yep.
I went down there for that, and they got like a little auditorium in there where they can present awards and stuff, and it's just really a cool little setup, and some of Matt's cars are in there, and Robbie Reiser's car is in there, and then they got some history on the town in there, and there's like a couple different levels, to get into that place, and Dick Kurth has that down there and works for that, or maybe he owns that, I'm not sure, but they keep everything cleaned up and really nice.
I'll have
display.
to check that out.
Yeah, you need to go down there and see that. It's very nice. So, I'd like to do something like that up here. I mean, we have the Dick Trickle Memorial. That's great thinking on your grandpa's part. If him and Marv came up with that. I don't know whose original idea, if it was Gary's or, who did that, but it's really a beautiful place.
Yeah, I think the thing that, and I don't know if, everyone realizes it. And from the beginning, I didn't realize it, when they were going to put that whole deal together, I was like, okay, hey, they're going to raise some money. They're going to get a contractor in there, and these guys are going to come in. They're going to scrape away the dirt. They're going to put up the beams. They're going to pour the concrete and, do all this and that. I had no clue that those guys were going to do so much work themselves.
I didn't either.
I had no clue. I mean, my grandpa, I put in a lot of time at my race shop, and there would be times on a Saturday morning, he would beat me down there, and he'd be sitting in a chair with the drill press and drilling holes in beams.
Yeah.
And I would work down at the shop, and I'd be getting ready to go home for dinner, and hey, Grandpa, you leaving anytime soon? Well, I'll lock up, Colin. Don't worry about it, and still just drilling holes, and or whatever it may be, or building some fixture. I mean, I think it speaks a lot for all those guys involved on their character to do that for a friend.
Yeah.
Because they appreciated each other so much, that they're that close, and then what they thought of Dick and his accomplishments. I think that was it's awesome.
Yeah, some people always said to me, "Oh, Tom and Dick don't get along." I said, "They don't, huh?" And that was early in my career with my Cyclone. I said, "Well, that's funny because both of them just bent my leaf springs on my Cyclone last night. The two of them together, they argued about where they were going to heat the spring at." And
one had one opinion and one had another opinion.
Yeah, and then they had me put angle iron on.
What'd you do? Just split the difference?
I don't know. I think your grandpa said something to Dick about, remember when we heated them back here, they broke, so we got to go up here. And then Dick says, okay, I remember that. And then they had a big torch out, and they were heating the springs, and that set the car down in the back. Okay. So my leaf springs came up and bumped the unibody. And then went down to the hangar, but them two did my car, and the thing was fast. So, and I had to weld angle iron in there for the spring to bump against, so it didn't hit the unibody.
Okay.
So they made me do that, but they bent the springs. So it's just, stuff like that I remember, it's like, wow, If I'd have went and run it myself, it wouldn't have been right.
Yeah, that's the thing I think about. Those guys raced so many nights a week, and they really, the progression of where racing was. I mean, you think of racing from the 60s and through the 80s, the evolution of racing was insane, and those guys really set the foundation for what the way race cars what they became in the 90s and what they look like now.
Yep.
And yeah, just the things they had to do and try. Oh no, we gotta heat that leaf spring right here because they broke here, and the things that they
learned.
They're
things pioneers. Yeah, I mean, I at your shop, your grandpa had a dyno set up there. It was like on a snowmobile trailer, and they had Dick Skibba brought mufflers over from the Army trucks when he worked at the Armory.
Okay.
And they had the exhaust running into them, and they would dyno motors right there in the shop. They had all the water lines running there and fans. They had a radiator on there and fans. And I mean, you put your engine on there and go run it. Dick had one of Mike Miller's Ford motors on there, 302, and he had her bogged down on the dyno and giving her gas. And all of a sudden I heard it rattle, and I got off the couch, and the rod went right by my head and hit the wall over where your dad's welding bench is over there. And it was sitting there steaming and oil pouring out all over. And Mr. Trickleton is just shut all the switches off and grabbed a cigarette and said, well, I got to go back to the shop. And walked out the door. And Mike Miller's going, Trickle, hey, you blew my motor up. Hey, Trickle. He's yelling at him, and Dick gets in the van, drives away. They dynoed motors there, And them guys, they tried different carburetors and plugs, and them guys were smart, way ahead of their competitors, So
yeah. Pioneers is definitely the best way to describe them.
Yeah, some of the stuff that they have, what they did, it's just amazing. So, and your grandpa, he could build anything, and Jim Bach was the same way. I see it at Bach's, and then I see your grandpa do it, and I'm like, how can you take, a piece of ready thread and get something to run one direction, and then it flips over and comes back? I mean, and there's arms and springs running off of stuff, and I'm like, how does he know how to do that? I mean, he's way advanced ahead of me.
Yeah, one of the coolest stories I had heard, in thinking of those guys being pioneers and the different things that they've felt in a setup in a race car. Steve Holzhausen told me at my grandpa's wake that they had just built new Bach cars, and they're at West Salem, and they weren't going through the corner that well, and my grandpa's like, that Panhard bar's flexing. So he goes and reinforces this big Panhard bar they had in the cars, and I don't know if it was the later or in the weekend or whatever it was, or if it was the next race that they had there, and then next time way faster than them. And so Steve's like, yep. So we all went and reinforced our Panhard bars, and,
yep.
And I'm like, man, the feeling of being able to feel that thing's flexing and then knowing what that is, it's like, man, the experiences you would have had up until that point to be able to think, hey, that's what's going on back there.
I still tried to figure out your grandpa's data acquisition. He had that thing mounted in there with a big roll of paper on it and pens.
We still got it.
And and nothing has a graph or anything on it, but Tom understood it. He had the mini bike cables going on the A-frames and stuff, yep. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, wouldn't you just change the spring? If it ain't, so what I learned is if it don't turn into the corner, it's soften the right front spring, so it'll turn in. Your grandpa's like, you just pay attention to what you're doing and don't worry about me. And I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, he would take that roll off after State Park, and he'd roll that all up, and your grandma, and they'd put a rubber band around it, and in the cube van it went, and I'm like, there's no numbers on nothing. What's he watching, But he knew what he needed.
Yeah, they I was told, because there was really no way of I think the first time you ever put it on was at Madison, and there was no way of knowing, when you were going past the start finish line.
Yeah.
So he'd hit the brakes as he was going past the start finish line, so the car would jump, and then that way he'd put a big mark on the roll of paper on all the springs.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. The stuff. I think what impressed me is I went out to Jim Box one day, and Jim had to load something for me, and he comes out with a tractor with a 460 in it, with headers straight up on it. And I said to Jimbo, I go, how can you put a car motor in a tractor? Oh, you need an adapter is all you need. I'm like, that just blew me away. That them guys are that smart.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I don't know. Over the years, you see a lot of stuff with them guys, So, I still got it somewhere. I haven't found it lately. I have Marv Marzufka's 2-barrel. It actually bolts to the intake, and the carburetor sets completely sideways on it to get equal gas on the big blocks to all the cylinders.
Okay.
And I ran that, and I still got the plate. The plate's in my drawer at home. There's a little flat plate that sits on top of the carburetor, so you can just set your air box down on it and tighten it down. I was going to actually give that to Jay Chopik. And it's got Heims's on it. The throttle runs on a Heims, so you hook your regular throttle up straight in.
Okay.
But it's Heims to the carburetor to
Interesting.
open the throttle. Yeah, that's kind of a unique piece, too.
Oh, yeah.
Marv must have made that up, and that was on the car when I bought it from Doug.
Okay.
But, I took it off and put the regular carburetor on it, Wagner one,
Okay.
So, yeah. So somewhere I got some antique stuff laying around.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. To hear those interesting things and those things those guys tried it's fascinating.
Yeah. And they were, like I said, they were a group all their own. The guys that race nowadays have no idea how fast them guys were. Like I said, I was leading a feature at State Park, and they went by me like I was backing up, and I thought I was really doing great, Found out in a hurry who the boss was when he got a caution,
Yeah.
So, yeah. But they all treated me good, and, I don't think you can ask for anything better. So.
Yeah, you had a lot of good mentors growing up, that's for sure.
I did, yeah. And they taught me when I was doing something wrong, I had to do it right, You go back next week, you do it this way, I was letting a guy run me high at State Park, and I don't know who it was, but the next day I get a phone call from Dick, and he's like, how come you kept moving up? I said, well, I don't want to, get rubber marks all over my door, He's like, 5-Star builds doors every day. He says, hold him down or he's going to run you bad next week too, So I got advice like that from him, So, yeah, I was...
When you had all those guys around you, how did you know what to listen to? Or did you just listen to it all?
Listen to it all. Yeah, I pretty much did. And sometimes they came as a group, like 2 or 3 of them together, and said, hey, you're running me bad, maybe you got to slow down or maybe you got to go work on your car. Or none of them ever said buy tires, but and I didn't want to ruin that deal either. If they told me something, I tried to, abide by it because I wanted to stay friends with everybody, and
yeah.
And I think it made me a better racer, really,
Oh, I'm sure.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all those stories. I mean, some of those I've talked to you a lot of times, but I have some of those stories I've never heard, and I love them. Love hearing them. And, I think good luck on racing year number 49 for you. And
thank you.
Yeah, well, best of luck, and hopefully you pick up a feature win again.
Yeah, it'd be cool. I prepared a little bit more this year, so
okay.
So, but yeah, it might be in CWRA.
You prepared more, or you had Cole work on your car more?
Well, I have put a new rear end in the car, and then I got that new motor in there now, and updated all the shocks. So I'm a little bit better than I was last year. So
all right.
So we'll see. Put new brakes on it and just kind of went through it, because that's an old car.
Yeah.
So new master cylinders and all that stuff. So we'll see what we can do. So we know the driver's probably losing a little talent, getting older.
Yeah. So you Gotta improve the car if the driver's fading a little bit.
Yeah, yep. So, yeah, so that's the way it is. So, but I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, I know you got a wealth of stories, and I've loved hearing every one of them. So I appreciate you coming on, Kirby. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. So Kirby, we got talking after we shut everything down, and you're like, "Oh, I really should have told this story." So we're back on air and fired everything back up.
Well, over at Mike Miller's shop one night, Dick was there, and your grandpa Tom was there, and Mike Miller, and they started arguing over who has the tallest trophy. So they were going to have a contest and go dig them out and see who had the tallest trophy. And
My grandpa's got some tall ones. They're taller than me.
he's got some tall ones. Yeah, Tom does. So I go home and I have dinner and I come back. I'm farting around, and I don't think Mike was at the shop. He was gone home already. And so I went over to Dick's, and nobody was around there. Dave and everybody and Victor was gone. And I open up the door and walk in, and Dick's got a old style trophy all tore apart, and he's raising the trophy up on like the things you put in the pool cue.
Okay.
He's stacking them in each tier, making the trophy taller. And he says to me, "Don't say nothing to Tom." So I'm like, he's like, "I better lock that door." So he went over and locked the door. It was just him and I in there. So I don't know whoever won that, if Grandpa Tom won it, but talk about competition, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think, I don't know if Mike brought any of his down there or not to the shop. I don't know how it turned out, and I don't remember, but I just remember Dick stacking washers on the beer cans. He had the beer cans taken apart off that trophy, and he had longer ready thread, and he was raising that trophy way up. I thought that was just hilarious.
Oh, yeah, it is.
He's going to win at anything, you know?
Yeah.
So that was a great thing to walk in on, you know. That's part of me drifting around to the shops.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that was it. But I thought, I forgot about that, you know.
Oh, no, that's a good one.
Yeah. And I don't know if your grandma remembers who won it or not, but I don't remember
I'll have to ask
who
her.
won it. Yeah, I'll have to ask her. And I don't know if Mike remembers either, you know. We have to ask Mike. I'll have to have Steve Mall ask Mike Miller.
Okay.
Do you ever remember who won that deal? Because I didn't know. I just know Dick was cheating a trophy up.
Yeah.
Pretty hilarious.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks.
All right, we're off. Yep.
Thank you for listening in on another episode of Speed and Grease. And if it was your first episode, I really appreciate you checking us out, checking out Speed and Grease, seeing what we're all about, listening to our amazing guests and their fantastic stories. And if you like the show, if you got some laughs out of it, even if you didn't like the show, thank you for joining us, taking that time. If you're not, wherever you like to listen in, check out, cool things that we're posting, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever, Amazon Music. Give us a like, follow us, leave a comment, a rating. Really appreciate it. Really helps the show get noticed, and helps spread the word and keep these stories out there. And the more people that can hear these great stories, the better. Spreading as Jerry Guiley would say, spreading the gospel of racing, and just want to keep it moving. So thank you for listening.